Welcome to See You Next Tuesday. I'm Jade Chung. If you've been noticing and have ever wondered how freaking amazing my husband, the walking weapon, Josh Alexander, is looking these days, guys, you really have to pay attention to this episode. His nutrition and training coach is Rico Montana. And if you've never heard of that name before, then I suggest you listen, pay attention to this episode, because it's going to be so interesting. Not only that, Rico was an ex-pro wrestler. So there's bound to be crazy stories, right? Of course, pro wrestlers always have crazy stories. I cannot wait, so let's get to it. Okay, everyone, please help me welcome Rico Montana. How are you, Rico?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, please don't take this the wrong way.
Yeah.
But I know absolutely nothing about you, which makes this much more exciting. And I can't wait to hear your story and just learn about you.
Yeah. No, it's great. To be honest with you, I don't think anyone knows my story. People assume they know my story. So
Then I can't
no
wait.
one really knows it. Yeah.
Okay, so first off, let's get right into it. Tell me about your wrestling history, like who trained you and when and where did you debut?
Okay. So I was trained by Don Koloff, UFO. People who came out of there would be like Santino Marella.
Yes, yeah.
That's the most known person. Al Barone. I'm not sure if people know him. George or Alexander King. He wrestled as Jason X in 01.
I only know Santino.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I'll just give you a little background about my coach, which is like a little different than what like most people are accustomed to. The gym there was kind of serious. Like he didn't have a lot of students because he's kind of like old schooler. Like, so Don Kolov was like, I guess his celebrity was being like one of Stu Hart's right-hand men.
Mm-hmm.
So he had like kind of a old school kind of mentality when it came to things. So like when I walked into school, which I found by fluke, I just was going for lunch with a friend of mine, and then the school was next door to the place my friend took me to.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I walked in there, it was like just a serious vibe. It wasn't so it was positive, but it wasn't like, you could tell it was serious. So when I told him I wanted to wrestle, he asked me a bunch of questions. And then it was kind of like, okay, are you willing to leave your family, get up and go? Because if you want to make it, that's what you're going to have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Where it wasn't so much like, hey, just pay me monthly, and if you want to come, you can come. Like, for example, like while I was training, I saw people walk in, and he would ask them kind of the same questions he asked me. And it was like, I remember one guy in particular was like, are you married? Yes, I'm married. And it's like, do you have kids? Yes, I have kids. It's like, well, you're not going to really want to start a career to leave your family right now. So, I'm not the guy for you. Like, he sent more people away than he took.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a little my learning from the beginning was like, if you're not willing like to make this your life, just get out of here.
Yeah.
Like he said, like, I'm not going to teach you a few things so you can go show your friends and be the cool guy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of learning I did. Like the first 3 months, I wasn't even in a wrestling ring. I was in an octagon. So like he kind of taught me like the kind of old school mentality was like, if you get over, like someone's going to want your spot, and, like someone might try and break your leg. So you need to like learn to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So like, that was kind of like, the mentality that I had. So, like all the guys that were there didn't really work like Ontario indies. Like there was one guy who's like older. I never really saw him wrestle except once. He wrestled under Midnight Mass. So like he was like in the Stampede days, and he was like he worked a lot of tours for Emile Dupree, worked in like Budapest, Hungary. Like he came back and he was taking Al Barone to an indie show in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
So I tagged along like just to watch. So I went to watch, and this is while I was training, and it was on a native reserve. So I went there and then watched the show, kind of like saw what it was. And then by fluke, like 2 or 3 weeks after there, we went back to Brantford. Or sorry, I went with a friend of mine who was a property manager
Hmm.
to Brantford to deal with some like whatever his business was. And we ended up going to a bar after he did his business. And I saw a couple of people in there that I recognized from the indie show.
Yeah.
And I went up and asked, like, hey, you were at the wrestling show? Yeah. And they asked me if you're a worker. I said, I lied and said, yes. I've had, you know, I did 20 matches and I did like 10 battle royals. And the guy's like, okay, um, like I'm doing the show this date. Like you have a look, I'll give you a chance. So I was like, okay. And then that was for Nick Nitro, his name was.
Okay.
His company, I believe, was called CWI. So that was my first experience working the indies.
Okay, for
Um,
for reference, what year
yes,
are we talking here?
99,
99. Okay.
99, 99, 2000. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, that's he basically gave me my first opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you work a lot of Ontario indies at all?
Yes and no. Like it was really hard. Like it was hard to get like kind of in like with
Hmm.
anyone. So like I'd work for like Nick when you do like the native shows, and I wasn't really learning much, to be honest. Like he didn't have like the greatest kind of like guys, which I'm not insulting them. It's just like, when you're green, it's like you just want to learn, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't really learning much. And then I met a guy, Thorne. I think his name now is Chris Thorne. He has a company as well in like Niagara Falls, I think.
Okay.
He was really good to me. Like he lived at the time like somewhere up north. Like it was a really nice place, like before North Bay, but kind of like north of Barrie. And
Hmm.
like in the summer, he'd have a ring in his backyard. So like I'd drive up there and like go work out with like him and like his buddies. And
Hmm.
then like he ran some shows, so I did that. And then like like you're working like once, twice a month. So it's kind of like sucks because you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like I would go to like I would hear about indie shows and I would go, but it was like there's no way like I'm gonna get in with these circle of people. Except, do you remember a guy named Magnus? Like
Yeah,
he was huge.
yeah, yeah, the
Like,
like the WWE guy?
no, 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 no. Like he was
Different
like,
guy.
yeah, he worked with like, he worked a lot for like whatever was hot at the time, like the companies in London and then like Windsor. Like I think he worked for Scott Demore. He tag team a lot with Tid. Like he was like a huge, like he kind of looked like a bodybuilder guy. And then like he'd work with those guys in Niagara Falls, like Neo Wrestling, like Showtime, Eric Young, and those guys used to work there.
Okay, I should know this person. I think so. Wait, did he have long hair?
No, he had like short blonde hair. Like he was like the biggest guy. Like he was like maybe 6'3" and like 300 pounds, but like muscular. Like he stood out compared to everyone else.
Hmm.
But anyways, he knew me. He recognized me because he knew people in my life. And
Oh.
like he worked a lot of the clubs and stuff. So he's
Hmm.
like, like you look familiar, blah, blah, blah. You know this guy. Yeah, okay, you wrestle. Yeah, okay, I'll get you work. And then like, because I said, like, hey, if you get me in, like even like I don't care, I'll job out to whoever. I just want to get ring with someone different.
Hmm.
Um, and then so he kind of helped, like he tried, but it didn't really work out. Like, and then I did something that was a little like stupid, like when I look at it, but I just don't like now I'm a little more mature than I was then.
Hmm.
So I basically there was a promoter named Chris Jury who was working quite a bit.
Hmm.
So I basically challenged this whole change room. I said, like, book me and put me in with your toughest guy. I said, like, I'll do a match with him and then I'll beat the shit out of everyone in your change room. Like, so I don't know how true it is, but then like he called me and he's like, I basically told some of my guys in the change room the message and Tid said to book you. And I'm like, okay. Like, so I just went and then I started working for him. And then he obviously saw I was cooperative, like
Mm.
he's like, I want you to do this. Like, okay, like, I don't care. I just want to get ring time. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
So I did that for a while. And then, like, still not a lot of work. It was like maybe every 2 weeks.
yeah.
So then somebody, I forget who it was, but it was one of that guy, Chris Thorne's friends. He gave me an email address for a guy named Vance Nevada out in Manitoba.
Oh,
So
okay.
I emailed him, and then I was just like it was like the simplest email saying, like, this is my name, this is how I look. I just want to learn. Like, that was basically what I put, like, and I'm willing to come out there. So he told me come. So I went out to Manitoba and I stayed there a while. And there was really cool because they were working like 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Not in front of like not big crowds or anything. There's no money, but I mean, it was like, like, I lived in a minivan. I did the whole tour thing. Like, I won't even eat tuna to this day because I ate so much of it then because it was cheap.
Yeah.
So I did all that, and then I learned a lot from him because it was cool. Because like he'd be like, he'd tape the like matches, and then like I'd go to his house and he would watch it with me, and like he kind of, not to like go back too much, but the one thing I pride myself on is my coach taught me how to be a professional, and like,
Hmm.
and Vance Savannah lived like a professional, like, so even if he's not like WWF guy or whatever, like he was a real wrestler. Like, it's what he did. It's like he had like a steady paycheck from whatever company it was in Winnipeg. Like, he ran everything. He was in charge of the talent. Like, he was a real pro. So like he'd film the match and he'd sit there and tell me like, this was shit, this was good. So like, and we'd go over it. And then I spent quite a bit of time out there. And one of my biggest regrets to this day, like one thing I feel terrible about to this day, was also a great learning experience for me. Was there was like it's like one of the biggest in North America, like hockey tournaments for Native Indian people.
Hmm.
So they set up like a huge wrestling match, like wrestling show there. So there was like, it was a huge crowd, like, the biggest crowd I ever worked in front of at that point. It was like 5,000 people watching. And
Oh, damn.
then, yeah. And then somewhere out there, they have, I think it was Manitoba, maybe Ontario too. They have like a native sponsored channel, like TV.
Oh,
So
wow.
so they're filming it for TV. So because you're working like 4 days a week, even though it's like little crowds,
Hmm.
they're kind of teaching you how to work a storyline. um,
Yeah.
and then they, like, the accumulation all ended like on that show. So the guy I wrestled with, where my regret and where like feeling bad comes in, was I totally fucked up the guy's finish.
Mm.
And I was too green to say, hey, let's do it again. And then
Mm.
I guess he was too mad to say let's do it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, his name's Zach Mercury, and I totally fucked up his finish, and like still to this day it bothers me. But yeah, so it was a great learning experience. So then from there, I came back to Ontario, still barely any work. So then I went to um, North Carolina.
Wow. So
So
you
I
like
worked.
in a span of how long would you say that you went
Uh,
from to like Manitoba and now going to
I'd say
North
about like
Carolina?
from like my first match to getting to North Carolina was probably about 2 years.
Wow.
Well, like for me, like I said, like I was taught that like if you do this for a living, you do it for a living. So I
Yeah.
went through the like living poor and like, like I'm not gonna get a job. It's like, if this is what I want to do, like if I have to hustle, a hustle, like, you do what you got to do, right?
Yeah. You put
So,
100% in. Yeah.
well, yeah, and that was like, I had like, in a sense, I felt like I had no choice because I'm not gonna tell my coach, yeah, I'm gonna do it, and I'm not. Like they could have took my space to someone who's more serious.
And what's amazing is that you starting off with Don Kolov,
Mm.
who clearly wasn't training just to get money.
No.
He weeded out the people who seemed like they were gonna mess around.
Mm.
So, great coach right there already.
Yeah.
And then going to Manitoba and like having somebody to sit with you and go over all your stuff with you and critique everything. Like that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you got to go, to be able to go through all that.
Yeah. And he told me, Vance, he said, like, the only reason you're here is because what you put in the email. I said, I didn't put much in the email. And then he said, like, he's like, yeah, but you just said you wanted to learn. He's like, most people are just saying they want to work, and I'm like, no, like, I know at that point, but just to like put everything in perspective, just so you understand my like history before I even got into wrestling was like, my mom, like she had me young. So she was like going to school and stuff. So she would put me in things like gymnastics and like things I didn't like at the time. Like I wanted to play basketball or like ball hockey. So like I actually had like a gymnastic background. And then like she also made me like for disciplinary reasons, like go to the gym when I was 13. So like wrestling wasn't like I had a little bit of like not connection because there's no such thing, but like okay, so just I'm gonna make this quick because I don't want to be boring, but just so it'll make sense when I tell you my career. So at 13 years old, my mom put me in this gym. This gym was like the biggest meathead gym you ever like see in your life. Like, I'm 13. Like, so, like it's such a meathead gym. Like I think Trish Stratus for a while was the aerobic instructor, like at the gym. And then like they would do like photo shoots there for like bodybuilding. So you'd see like 300-pound oiled guys like
that's
and
intimidating.
It was like, yeah, like so like even like now it's kind of common to see a guy walk around with Tupperware and eat his food, but like back then it wasn't. Like I'm 40, so you figure like this is like whatever, I'm bad at math, 17 20 27 years ago, no, whatever it was, long time ago, there would be guys in there like eating it. And I remember, like, I'll never forget this, like one time I went to watch like car races when I was like 15 years old, like people racing on the street. And everyone met at a donut shop. So I walked in and grabbed the donut. I walked out of the donut shop and some like meathead who recognized me from the gym, like totally shit on me for eating a donut and going to the gym. So so I had a athletic background before. So like wrestling, I'm not gonna say it wasn't hard. It's something new, but it was like,
discipline.
And then
like you learn like, discipline, right?
Yeah, like, and I'm not shitting on people, but like, now it's like you walk in a wrestling school and you feel like you have to tell at least 60% of the people in there, like, hey, go lift weights, like, and I'm not saying everyone has to look the same, but it's like, you have to say that. Where it was like when I walked in to my gym, like I know for a fact that if I wasn't lifting weights beforehand, like there's no way like my coach would have took, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, okay, what's like, I need to ask me questions. Like, I'm like, oh, I did a little sambo, like I did gymnastics. I'm like, oh, okay, like you lift weights. Yeah. Okay. Tell me what you do. Or like, do this. Tell me what you eat. Okay. Do this. So it's like, okay. So in his mind, I'm sure of this. It was like, oh, I don't have to force this guy to lift weights,
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I'm not like 6'6", 300 pounds, like I'm barely 6 foot, like at the time when I was training, I was about 185, like in shape, but I mean like, so I have athleticism. So like, that's where I think it gave me like somewhat of an advantage, learning, like I just needed someone to guide me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry for giving you that history, but I think it'll make sense as I tell you my
absolutely. Career. Going back to North Carolina, like I just want to know like where you've been since you, because like kind of like me, I like booted it for the States, and I just went with the flow and went wherever it took me. Like there was no planning, no nothing. I just went. So to me, this is like already interesting just because you're just going.
Okay, so I know now that I made a mistake in timing. So I did my first wrestling match to Carolina was less than 2 years. So wow. I went to Carolina with a couple guys from Ontario. We went down there, we worked there. Great people, super hospitable, like everything was great. And it was a great learning experience for me because I learned that as much as I thought I was a fan of wrestling, I'm not. Because like we would be going to like someone's house and they would be watching like NWA tapes. And I had no clue that the big boss man was like wrestled before he went to WWF.
Oh,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this guy looks like Big Boss Man. They're like, it is. And then I'm like, no. Like, I'm like, but he was somebody before Big Boss Man. Like, this is like when I'm like, I'm just gonna sit down and shut up. You know, like I didn't know anything. Like, so we did some shows there, and then that was like great learning too. I really enjoyed the work there because like it's I don't know, like it was more like storytelling through athleticism opposed to storytelling through promos. You know, like
Okay. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like that was good. And then from North Carolina, I jumped on a plane and I went to Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Jeez. Okay.
mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
expecting like another state, but
No,
okay, we're gonna go
like
international.
yeah, yeah, I came a colony. I came back to Ontario first, and then I went to Puerto Rico. Um, I went there, like same thing as like everywhere else. I just basically showed up. Um,
Okay, but
I went.
did you just like go on a limb to go, or was there something that drew you?
Well, okay. They're like, I look at like I always looked at wrestling as like steps. Like so, it's not like now. So like especially then. So like a lot of like my influence was okay, I got to go back again and tell you this because we jumped ahead too
Yeah,
far. So
that's
my
okay.
coach, okay, my coach is like I said, he was like real close with the Hart family, right?
Yeah. We're talking
So that
about Manitoba coach or
no,
Don
no, no,
Koloff?
my
Don Koloff.
Don Koloff.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like he's my only coach. Like Vince Avetta
Okay.
helped me, but I mean like he's my coach. So okay, so Don Koloff's close with the Hart family. So WWF is in town doing house shows like through Ontario.
Mhm.
So Davy Boy Smith shows up at the, or sorry, my coach tells me like Davy Boy Smith wants to go out tonight for dinner, and then he wants to go out. He's like, I'm older. He's like, I'm not taking him to the club. You have friends, you take him. And
Mhm.
I'm like, okay. So like, go like have dinner with him and Steve Blackman,
Mhm.
who my coach knew as well. Don Kolov knows as well. And then, so having dinner with them. And then we're actually there for this guy. He wrestled as Alexander King or Jason X, like he was in 01.
Mhm.
He's wrestled all over. I think he's still wrestling to this day, to be honest. So, yeah, I don't know what his name is now. Like, so he's like Alexander King. I know his real name's George. Like he's tall guy, like 6'6", ripped. Anyways, looks great. So we were there because we were giving Davy Boy Smith his stuff to say, hey, he's ready. So Davy Boy Smith's like, okay, like I got his stuff, like, okay, we'll go to the club. So I had some friends like that worked in the city of Toronto because, like I said, my mom put me in a gym at 13 full of meatheads. All I met there was juice bags and bouncers. You know, like, so I was getting into clubs way before I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
So we take him to the club and then like, you know, whatever, like have a good night, like no problem, no one bothers him. Then like a couple of other guys came there, like Albert and Test, who, okay, now I got to go back a little bit, rewind. I know it's a lot of info, but a lot of like stuff happened.
I love this.
When,
Yeah.
okay, so remember I told you my mom put me in a meathead gym that did a lot of like juice bags and stuff like that thing? Okay, so they would do all these photo shoots like Muscle Mag, like there was a popular magazine back in the day, like for
Yeah.
bodybuilding.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Muscle Mag would always be at the gym, and I guess they'd always see me there when they're like doing the photo shoots. They said, okay, we're gonna do a series on kids. So they did a spread on me when I was like 17 years old. So
Whoa.
yeah, so one of the guys, like my mom has the magazine still. I'm not that much of a mark for myself. I don't keep a lot of like my own shit.
It's good
But
memories.
yeah, I guess. Yeah. Well, my mom has it, so it's there. Um, one of the guys that was at the photo shoot was like workout partners with Test. So when now we're fast forwarding years later, well, not that many years, but a couple years later, I'm at the nightclub with Davy Boy Smith, and Test walks in with this guy that I did the photo shoot, like who was at the photo shoot. So it was like, oh, okay, small world kind of scenario, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So so we're all hanging around. Everyone had a good time. So then like, okay, like, you know, it's like 4 a.m. Okay, time to head back. So we're heading back to the hotel. And Davy Boy Smith says, you have your gear. And I said, I don't even have gear. Like I'm a student, you know? And
Mhm.
he's like straight, like, so I'll be honest here, I don't care. I don't wrestle anymore. He's like, you know, me and Shawn Michaels have the most power in this company. If I want to get you a job, I get you a job tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, but like I respect my coach so much. I was scared to just say yes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I didn't even do a one match yet. You know, like I was like maybe like 6 months into training.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so that experience happened. And then like just talking to him, it was like when I was going to the Puerto Rico thing, was like learning the steps. It was like those guys like worked in territory days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they would go from one territory to the next, and then ending up in New York, which is like WWF, was like that's where you go when you've made it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So my mentality was like my coach taught me the same thing. So it's like, okay, if I do like, you know, a little indie wrestling here and I go to like this territory and I go to that territory, by the time, you know, like one or two things will happen. Either I can go into like WWF with or WWE like with confidence saying, okay, like I've worked these territories, I've learned,
Mm-hmm.
or they're gonna hear about you, you know, and they're gonna have an interest in you because like look at like guys like Val Venus, like aside from the Puerto Ricans, like they were all in Puerto Rico and then they or Mexico and then they ended up in WWE, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Puerto Rico. I did not deserve to go there. Like I didn't know shit. But like I just knew that there was a hotel at the time called the Dahlia where like all the wrestlers stayed.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there and it was like super cheap. It was a shithole. I went there and like got a room and then like and with like no joke, like I went in my room, put my bags down, killed a couple centipedes, and then like when I walked back downstairs to the lobby, there was already a guy there saying, "You're a wrestler?" Yeah. Okay. Like I'm from like WWC, like you know, we put our guys in here, and then he's like, okay, he's like, and I'm like, yeah, like you like how does this work? Like I don't even know how it works. And he was a nice man. I forget his name, but he was a nice man. And then he's like, okay, he's like, what room are you in? I'm like, I'm in this room, and then he's like, okay, I'll let you know. And then I'm like, okay, let me know like what I have to do, like or where I can go watch a show. And then like 2 days later, like so I just figured out where's the gym and whatever, and then you know, you'd see guys like a guy named Mustafa Saeed. He was New Jack's partner in ECW.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yep.
like, you know, he kind of looked at me and then he's just like, you know, like, who brought you down here? I said, I brought myself down. And then I was talking to him. And then 2 days later, they're like, okay, like, have your stuff ready. You're working tonight. And then I'm like,
Wow.
okay, yeah. So I went to the show. I worked with these two guys from Florida. So it was like good for the language. And then so I teamed me up with a guy from Puerto Rico, and then
Mm-hmm.
I worked them, and it was super cool because like there's like real old school, like the heels and the faces don't even change in the same change room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like you don't even see the guys you're working. So like someone just come up to you and just say, okay, you're gonna go like 11 minutes, and this is the finish. And it
Oh,
was like,
wow. So
well, yeah,
you just go out there and talk?
yeah. So I was telling like my partner at the time, like I don't know, I think his name was Wilfredo or something, but like I don't even know him. And then I'm just like, yeah, fuck him. Like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, and then he's like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. He's like, so because of riots and stuff, they don't have ringside seats. So like,
Oh.
yeah, so like the crowd's like picture like a high school, like a big high school gym, and like
Yeah.
when they have bleachers, so the fans are in the bleachers, but then like there's no ring sides. Like I don't know if they have ring sides now, but at the time they didn't have ring sides. And then like at that moment, I was like, this is kind of weird. But then like 3 days later, I understood why. So I did the match, and it was like I don't know, it was like Invader, the guy who they say killed Bruiser Brody. He was the booker, so he was all
Uh,
smiles to me, going, "Oh, you're getting your chance tonight," you know. And then like,
that's
okay, like
nice.
this is what I want you to do, and then I'm like, okay, like cool. And
But
then
like up against a guy who does he speak English?
yeah, no, two guys. So I was in a tag team match. So my partner had broken
Oh,
English,
oh, oh,
but the
okay.
guys I wrestled against, they were I don't remember their name. It was so long ago. Like they were from Florida. They had like a money gimmick, like, but they were good. Like they were big guys,
Okay, okay.
believable. Like they were good, and it was like they spoke English, so it's like okay, like I'm starting off because the like my partner's like, you want to start or I start, and I'm like, no, let me start because I'm like I don't want to come in the ring and then like it's hard to call, right? So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
if I could lock up with the guy, at least I could hear him. So
Mm-hmm.
I did like like lock up, push off, all that stuff they were calling, and it it was like the basic of the basic matches. And like, even for me, when they're like, call your offense, like I would say, call your offense. And I kept it so simple because I didn't want to screw anything up. Like, I didn't even call a hip toss. Like, I was like, hey, drop the hole, like stuff like that. And then like, I lied to Invader too. He's like, how many matches have you done? I'm like, yeah, like 300, but really at that point, I probably did like maybe 60 or 70. Right. And then, so, they knew I was the shits. And then I worked like 2 days. And then the third day I went to the show, which was a TV taping, which I obviously knew I wasn't going to work there. But I went to the show and there was a riot. So then I understood why they don't have ringside seats.
Oh,
like, yeah, everyone was just like shitting, like, and then like the guys there were so nice though. Like I wish I really like had a better memory and recollection of who they were. And I wish I was more of a wrestling fan to know, because I swear like it was these two guys that were like Puerto Rican from New York that like I'd seen in like old ECW tapes, but I don't remember. And they were like so good to me. Like even Mustafa's like, let's go. And then there was another guy, Tahitian Warrior. I believe, I don't know for sure. I know they're related, but I think he might be Yokozuna's brother.
Oh.
And like super amazing guy. Like they were teaching me so much just listening to them. Like, because then like after is like all the like foreigners or whatever would go for dinner and they'd invite me and then go hang out in Mustafa's room, and like just listening to them was great. And then 9/11 happened.
Oh.
Yeah, and then they're like, look, basically, like, I'm going to tell you what they said to me, but these weren't the words they used. I'm going to be honest and not use wrestling talk. Like, you're the shits. You're not worth a visa. Get the fuck out of here. Like, basically, that was what happened. Like, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to get out of here. And then that man, I forget his name, but that man who originally, like, knew I was there, the first hour I was there, he was telling me, he's like if you want to go somewhere like and really learn and it's just easier for you, they're like, go to Mexico. And then I'm like, okay. So I flew back to Philadelphia. I didn't even make it to Toronto. I flew back to Philadelphia because I had a flight from like San Juan to Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
And then so I went like San Juan to Philadelphia and then like ended up back in Toronto. And then I was like, okay, like, the world's changing right now.
Yeah.
Like it's a different place. So so then I was like, okay, so I just like figure out how to make some money, and then like I gotta head to Mexico, and then that's what I did. But in the meantime, I worked some indie shows. Like I did work indie shows, like some good ones too. Like not good ones, but you know what I mean. Like,
are you talking about in Ontario or
in Ontario? Yeah, no, in Ontario.
Okay.
Like, so when I came back to Puerto Rico, I was like, hey, like, I know I'm gonna go to Mexico. It's just I don't want to like lose this kind of like fire like feeling that I have, where it's like, I want to improve. So I worked some shows in Ontario. Same guys, basically. Like, they put me in a tag team with a guy named Matt Burns.
Yeah.
So I worked with him, and then but I still couldn't like, I don't know, like how can I say it? Like not penetrate. Like I couldn't get in a click. Like there's like all the Ontario guys that were like booked on every single show, and like I'll be honest, I could give a shit to work with most of them, but the one that I really wanted to work with was like Showtime Eric Young. Like I'm a huge fan of his. Like, and I don't even think I ever met him. Like, but I was just like, I just remember seeing him on the indie shows and just being like, holy shit, like this guy's a wrestler, like, so like he was, I'm a fan of his, and I never had the opportunity to work with him, like, because I guess I couldn't like penetrate that like cliquish thing. Like even when I worked for like Chris Thorne, like he'd bring in like Tyson, Tornado, and there was a guy Jack Damage, and they were great, but it was like they're just working each other. It's like, why are you bringing them in and they're not even sharing the wealth? Like just because they're doing dark matches, like who gives a shit, like. Yeah, so I never really like even my problem to this day is I don't fit in like with the wrestling circle, like in the sense of like the Ontario indie scene. Like I have friends, like I don't have like heat or like problems with anybody, but it was just like I don't know, it was just like you're kind of like thrown here.
Do you have any friends like that you met along the way that you still keep in touch with today?
No, like friends in wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the only reason I have Instagram isn't for followers. Like I could care less. It's just to keep up with like what people I met in wrestling are doing.
Okay.
So like if we're talking because we haven't gotten to the Mexico stage yet,
Hmm.
yeah, like I talked to RJ, I talked to Tid, um, I talked to anybody. Like I talked to your husband,
Hmm.
and but those were people that I met like after, and like in terms of like when I first started, like who I talked
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
um, like once in a while, like Chris Thorne, like just a hey, how are you? Like not much, like because I'm not like this is the reality of wrestling. It's like whether people want to hear it or not, it's like out of sight, out of mind,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
so, and I'm okay with that. Like I don't care. Like I always had my friends in real life, like
Yeah.
so. But like guys that I met along the way, not no, I wish you could more. But like I said, like if you're not seeing people at shows and stuff, and I could care less to sit there and have a conversation with somebody about the politics or the drama in Ontario indie wrestling. I mean,
Hmm.
like, there's no money. Like what are you arguing about? Everyone should be loving each other. Like, no, it's just the
That's the
truth.
truth.
Like,
It
yeah,
is.
I actually just like I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago because I saw Josh, like, and
Yeah.
I said to him, I said, I said like what do people think of me in the sense of like, was I ever bad to any of you guys? And then he's like, no, not at all. He's like, you were intimidating. And I said, well, no, like, it's not my problem if you think I'm intimidating. Like, I do anything to intimidate you? And he's like, no. And I'm like, I know already. Like, I'm not dumb. Like, my second go around, which we'll get to, is like, like meeting Josh and meeting like that crew. Like, I'm huge fans of like who I'm a humongous fan of from Ontario,
Oh.
who shocked me the most, Kingdom James.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like I like met Kingdom, and I'm just looking at him, and I didn't know nothing about like his history. Like he has a deep history in wrestling. Like he was
Uh-huh.
around big stars. Like I don't know that. I'm just seeing Kingdom, and like we're friendly, and like I'm nothing like most wrestlers. Like I've never read a comic book in my life, so like I tease him, call him a nerd, like like stuff like that. Like so, like and then I remember like getting booked on the show with Kingdom, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to expect. Just like chubby guy, like older guy, like whatever. And I watched this guy work, and I'm like, holy shit, how is this guy not on TV? Like I know that's maybe sounds odd to people, but like he just blew me away. Like he's got so much more athleticism than he looks like he has, and he's got
Hmm.
such like an amazing like mind in a sense. Like where like he's one of my favorites. But I didn't meet him until like I was pretty much done wrestling. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Kingdom. Like I'm a big
He
mark for him. Yeah.
he's for sure smiling huge if he's listening, which I know he should be listening.
Yeah, like every couple months, like I'll just like message him and just be like, "Are you okay?" Like how you doing, stuff like that. Like I actually like him. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, like,
He's good people. He's very good people.
yeah, but I mean, like, I understand it too. Is like with the out of sight, out of mind is like real. Like it's like if you're not like invested and involved in like everything that's going on, you're just kind of forgotten about, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, and I'm okay with that. Like I don't really want to hang around a wrestling show anyways. Like so, yeah. But I just like was hoping that like that's why when I asked Josh that I was like, I just hope that like I was like positive towards people. Like I'm fans of like quite a few people like from Ontario that like I
Mhm.
don't even talk to or have relationships with. But uh to go back to what you originally asked me is like, no, I don't really like talk to that many people like from when I first started. Like not in a negative way. It's just you grow apart. Like some guys I don't even know if they're what they're doing.
Yeah, and you know what? That's totally okay. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing in the book saying that you have to make friends and stuff like that. What about like
Yeah, but
during
I don't
that?
think I made enemies.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I don't think. If I did, oh well. Like I still sleep well.
So
Yeah.
so then along the way, were you in like groups of like people that you would hang out with? Let's say like after the show, would you go out and hang out with a certain group? certain
Okay, so
people?
this is like pre-Mexico. So like I said, I teamed with Matt Burns. So like he lived like not too far from where I live, so we drive together quite a bit.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm trying to think who else, like Hornet, um, Mikey Madrox, uh, like we kind of like hung out. Like yeah, like you go for like eat and stuff like that, but like socially, not really. Like I'll be honest with you, like I never felt like I fit in a way where it's kind of like I said, like I'm not saying all wrestlers do this. I never read a comic book in my life. The wrestling change room to me was like I am. I don't know. Okay, so I'm gonna get racial here, but like I'm maybe to you I'm white, but like growing up in like the neighborhood like I grew up in is like I wasn't really white. You know what I mean? Like so like it was just a bunch of white guys like that like it gave me like kind of like PTSD flashbacks of like the people I'd get in fights with all throughout high school. You know?
Oh.
Like no,
Oh.
like not in a bad way, but like it was just like I don't drink. Like, you know, I like if I'm gonna party, I'm very private, like with who I'm doing that around. So it's like when all the guys would like go to someone's house and get drunk, it was like for me, it's like, what the fuck am I gonna go there and do that for? You know, like I don't even trust these guys. Like, what if something happens? You know, like I only know these guys from
You're an interesting person. Like,
no,
oh,
no, but like no, I know I'm like it was just weird. It was like, you know what it is? It was like I didn't come from a wrestling school of 40 guys and then you all go on the road together. So it
yeah.
was like I was on my own. So it was like
Yeah.
anyone I met was just like meeting them. Like it was like not like I didn't have anybody to like from, you know, like to say, okay, this guy's got my back. And then another thing too is like you see it not in a violent way, but you see like there's politics when there's no money. Like, so imagine where like there's money. You know what I mean? Like, so, and it's actually the opposite. The truth is the opposite. Where there's money, this is like politics doesn't affect you as much. But like, it was kind of like, well, why can't I get a chance? I look better than everyone on your fucking roster. And then it's just like,
Mhm.
you know, we just don't have room. But because they don't have the balls to tell you the truth, to say nobody likes you or trusts you here. You know, like, and that's what the reality is. But you hear it much later, or you figure it out
Mhm.
much later. So it's not like a malice thing. It's not like people are like, oh, I don't like this guy, but it's kind of like, oh, who's he? You know, like he looks a little bit too in shape. You know, like he looks like maybe he can break my ankle. You know, like or maybe he's just the shits. You know, like there's too much of that. It's just like, how are you? Like I tell people are not in the business all the time, saying like the best wrestler in the world could probably be pumping gas because he never got an opportunity.
Mhm.
And like that's what I feel like is real. So it was like there were all those clicks. Like I remember asking Thorne, "Hey, book me against Tyson," and then it'd just be like, you know, like I could learn something from him because when you're wrestling people that are at your level or even below you, you're never going to learn. You know, and
Right.
it's just
Yep.
like, no, I got him booked against this guy. And it's like, yeah, but everyone's watched him work that fucking guy like 40 times. You know, like, and
Yeah.
then it's like, why don't you just tell the truth and just say like he doesn't want to work with you? So even if
Mhm.
that's not true, that's what I'm going to take from it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, so it's like I don't have like resentment. It's just acceptance. So it's just like one of those things where it's like, okay, like move on. And then, like I said, like just socially going to people's houses and getting drunk isn't like something that I would normally do. Like unless it was with like a bunch of people like, you know, you trust. Because
Yeah.
I said, like growing up, like in high school and stuff like that, it was like all like the jocks like bars and stuff like that. If we'd walk in there, we'd just be fighting them all the time. You know, like so it didn't kind of get that PTSD flashback where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna end up fighting all these guys, forget it. You know,
Can I
like
can I
go
ask
ahead.
you what area you grew up in?
Uh so I grew up originally like Chester Lee. And then like I moved to Markham like for high school.
Chester Lee. Where's Chester Lee?
Chester Lee's like VP in like Finch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then like before that was like always like Scarborough area, but like it was very multicultural like where I grew up. You know, it
Yeah.
was like hard
Yeah.
to find white. It was hard to find real white people. Like it
Mhm.
was like it was all like Europeans and like a lot of Jamaicans, Asians. You know, like that's even the way we grew up. And then even
Yeah.
going to high school, like when I moved to Markham, I'm like, okay, let's see what the deal is with Markham. So like I have
It's
an
all
Italian
Asians.
background. Well, at the time it was like there were Asians, but it wasn't like predominantly Asian. But like, like when I went to high school, like I have Italian background. So there was like quite a bit of Italians there. But then it was like, well, what part of Italy are you from? And then it's like, okay, if you're not Sicilian, then it's like you hang around. So when people would say to me, oh, you went to high school with all Italians, I was like, yeah, but I said like there was only like kind of 11 of us that weren't like Sicilian. So we weren't necessarily like part of the group, like, but in my high school, everyone was cool, like whether it be like the Jamaicans, the Asians, and like my friends to this day, like, which I think prepared me, which I'll get to in going to Mexico, was like to this day, it's like we have like a barbecue or like it's a mix. Like there's Jamaican people, there's Asian people, there's different Euros, like there's probably not a lot of white people, but like that's kind of like the way I grew up, and I think that like nothing wrong with it. It was just like I think that's what kind of prepared me. Like even I think culturally, like I have like a lot of Asian friends. So when they have a baby, like the 100th day is like a huge deal.
Yeah.
Like so like I'm getting invited to go to like these dinners and stuff like that, and then like see the way they do it, and then like then like even for like other Europeans or Italians like to hang out with, it's like like we have like baptism stuff, and like you go and it's just like see all the people you grew up with, and it's like a big multicultural fest, like so even like growing up in Chester Lee, like I played hockey, like I played ice hockey, but like my ice hockey team, like which is a predominantly white sport, was like I was the whitest guy on the team, like so so moving to Markham, it was like you notice like okay the football team was like predominantly like black and white guys, right? And then it was like like the hockey team was like more white guys. Like I was no way I was going to make that hockey team. Like they were amazing, like so like everyone was kind of friends, but it was like almost like okay, like when you're young and full of testosterone and you're just fighting and doing dumb guy stuff, it's like you kind of get sectioned off. So I'm not saying in any way I wanted to fight anybody like that I met wrestling. Maybe I did a couple of them, but like not because of like the way they were. It was just, you're not going to break into a clique. It's just not going to happen. Like, I don't know how it is now, but at the time it was very hard.
Yeah, like I'm trying to understand, like, where did you learn, like especially during high school and basically at a young age, where do you learn to just, you know, what am I trying to say? Like, I don't want to say not trust easily, but like kind of like look out for yourself. Like, how do
Well, you
you,
have no choice. It's just like, I don't know, like how did I learn? I understand the question. I know it's hard to word,
because
but
like
it's like,
the wrestling business is messed up. Well, let's just be real. Especially like back then. When I started
yeah.
out in 2003, like it
Mhm.
was messed up. So even for you starting much earlier, like I could only imagine.
Yeah, like I also learned like some of that from Don Kolov. Like he prepared me more mentally than physically, in a sense where it was like, even like little things like pay your taxes. Like we went over everything. Like it wasn't so much like we do training 2 hours, 3 days a week, but then we'd go for dinner and we'd stay there for 4 hours. And that's where I feel like I learned a lot to prepare me. The only thing was like I was maybe a little naive, where like it wasn't so much of a not trusting. It was like I'm going to give you 100% trust, and then like let's see what you do with it. And you just know, like I don't know, like I'm not overly sensitive, so it's not that I was overthinking things. It's like when you walk into a room and there's a vibe that you're not like 100% welcome yet. Like, do you understand that?
Yes. Yep.
Like,
Totally.
okay. So it's like when you're constantly having that, like I'll never forget like someone, I forget who it was. Like, but don't get me wrong, there are great people too. Like I remember like a guy, he wrestled as Ricky Stardust. He was cool with me. Like he was like one of the first guys like I ever worked with when like I started working for Chris Jury. And it was like he was cool with me. And then he's like, you want to know how you make extra money because the pay's shit. I'm like, how? He's like, just make t-shirts. They're cheap. So I'm like, okay. So I made t-shirts, right? And then I'm like, okay, so people got to like wear these to know that they exist. So I like offered a couple guys. I'm like, hey, you want one of my t-shirts, like just to wear to the gym or something? And they're like, keep it. Don't want your shit, And then I was just like,
Jeez.
okay. No, but it was like, okay. Like, so now I know where you stand. But then the
Yeah.
funny thing is like, I went and made a couple bucks in this business. And then it's like, you come back around and then they're like, hey, buddy, you want to wear my shirt? And I'm like, I'm not like, and like, I'm not a dick. So I'm like, yeah, give me your shirt. I don't care. I'll wipe my ass with it. Like whatever. Like, so, cause you don't forget, but I'm like, I don't want to be small and then like, just ignore it. You know what I mean? Like, so, it is hard. Like, and you're right. Like back then, especially, I think, I don't know now, it's so hard to talk, but I'll give you an example. When I came back to Ontario, like after Mexico, it was very different than it was before.
How
Like
long how long were you in Mexico for?
straight 7 years,
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a big
7 years,
difference.
6 7 years. Yeah, it was a difference. Like I don't know, like I'm not like it wasn't bad. I don't know, like I don't feel like there was bullying. Like I'm sure there was a lot of dramatics, like like who are we gonna pick on now? Like who's the heel? Like, oh, this guy said this, fuck him. Like there was a lot of that stuff. But I'll be honest with you, like I didn't get involved in anything. Like maybe a little bit of the heat I brought upon myself. Like I remember one time in particular, like we're working this show and like I'm partially to blame for this. So like as as I've gone over with you, I'm very low tech. So like
Mhm.
imagine how I was back then, like so there was a show and then it was like, okay, this is where the show is. And then I'm like, okay. So like find the directions. And I was driving. You find the directions and then you're like, okay, so you're timing it out. And I could have been more responsible and been like, an hour even earlier. So I get lost and then like finally get to the show and like walking in and I'm driving Matt Burns. So I feel like, oh man, I hope I didn't fuck this up for you, like for him.
Yeah, yeah.
And I walk and the promoter is like, you're late, just go home. And then I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, sorry, man, I got lost. And then he's like, and this is like real. And I only remember this, to be honest, because RJ reminded me of it because someone told RJ the story. Um, I'm like, I don't know, I got lost. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I know, like, it's bad and late. Like, take half my pay, whatever you want. Like, just don't fucking tell me to go home. He's like, oh, go home. I don't give a shit. You're late. Fuck it. Go home. And then I'm like, you know what, you little fucking cocksucker. I'm like, I should fucking kill you. Like, I should fucking choke you out right now. Like, and he's like, oh, what did you say? And like, he's saying, what did you say? But he's stumbling backwards. And I was just like, go fuck yourself. And then like, I was just like, sorry, like the burns. And he's like, it's okay. And the guy's like, haven't you ever heard of MapQuest? Like, no, I haven't. Like I really haven't. Like I don't know. And there was a couple guys on the show that RJ ended up working with in like Buffalo that were like, oh, that fucking Rico guy, he's fucked. I heard him fucking telling the fucking promoter. And I'm like, no, that's not me. Like, I'm not a dick. Like, well, I'm partially a dick, but like, it was one of those things where it was like, man, I got lost. It took me 3 hours to get to this place. Now I got to go home. Like, I'm definitely not here for the $20 fucking pay, like,
Yeah.
so, it was one of those things where it was like, that didn't help me either. But I think overall, I wasn't like a bad person to anyone and I was cooperative. And I remember like working for Chris Thorne, I would drive 2 hours up to his house to like use the ring in the backyard. And he would say, hey, like, do you want to come flyer with me? And I'm like, yeah, like I'll do it, like, and then even when I went to Manitoba, like I worked on the ring crew and did all that stuff. And I just found like, and not to shit on Ontario because I'm from here, but it was always like a bad vibe. Like it's almost like, how like the rest of Canada looks at Toronto, like we were stuck up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way Ontario wrestling was. Like it's kind of like think you're better. Like, it's just like there's this tension like in the air there. But it didn't deter me.
You described that perfectly,
Yeah.
actually.
And it's funny because no one made any fucking money here. You know what I mean? Like it was like, you guys are fucking marks, like the biggest fucking marks. Like, and I don't care. Anyone listening who gets offended by it, and tell me to fuck off. I don't know. Like, tell me I'm a bad guy on Twitter. Like, I don't give a shit. Like it's just the truth.
Like now in Ontario wrestling, the only drama is like between promotions where they're like, oh, I'm not gonna book you here because you're working for them over there. Like that's the stupid crap that's going on.
Okay, see, part of that, like, I don't technically disagree with because, like, if you're seeing the same face all the time, and that's what my beef was back then, it was like, okay, like these guys, like, okay, I'm not picking on them when I say it, but like Tyson versus Tornado was on every indie show in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
Great matches they had, whatever. Like they're good wrestlers, but like, why not put someone else in there? Like, if you're seeing the same person, like the whole goal, if you're a promoter, is to draw. Well, how are you going to draw if you have the same people? Like, why am I going to drive to Oshawa to watch you wrestle when I can just skip this weekend and go the next weekend to, I don't know, Toronto and just watch the same match?
Are we talking about the same match, like the same people that they always put together?
Like that's what the Ontario was back then. Like, so like if back then, like a promoter said to me, you know what, you work for, I don't know, XFL or whatever, like the makeup promotion, you work for them. So like, I'm not going to book you because you're just always working for them. So there's no point in me having you here. Like I wouldn't take offense to that. Like I would just be like, okay, like it becomes a problem if it's like, I don't like this person, so because you work for them, you can't work here.
See, that's interesting because I think with your personality, like I get that for you, and you're not wrong. But then if you look at it, I'll put myself as an example.
Yeah.
If you look at it, I was only working for one company, right? So this is when I came back. So I was just managing for one company that was also in Toronto. This place is Etobicoke, so pretty much Toronto. Yeah. Second, I was in a faction, right? Which all those 3 guys were booked at this show.
Yeah, so that's stupid.
So I was told that I wouldn't be booked because there's just too much similarities. And like, what? I'm just thinking, what the hell are you talking about? First of all, these 3 guys aren't even working together. Like they're not even together. They're all singles guys. They're doing their own thing. So why would booking me be like the most terrible thing in the world? Like, you don't think I can play different characters? Like that's what I mean when I'm talking about like,
I understand
just
that.
looking for work, right?
What happened to you was like what I kind of said earlier. It was a nicer way of saying, I don't want you around, or I don't want to pay you. Like that's what happened. Like
you're right.
That's just the way it is. Like, because no one's going to tell you the truth. That's the most frustrating thing of the wrestling business. No one will come up to you and say, you're shit. Like, get out of here. Like, I will never book you. Don't ever call me again. No one will ever tell you that. They're always just going to smile at you and say, like next time, or I got to like, let me talk to this guy. Like, who do you got to talk to? Like, who do you have to talk to give me $25? Like who? Like who?
When you,
like
when you talk about pay like that, it's freaking hilarious.
Well,
because it's true. You don't really think about that, but then it's like, for $25.
Exactly what it is. So like, but this is my whole thing. And like, okay, so like going to Mexico and like having, do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Cause then it'll make sense.
Let's go do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it'll make sense to what I'm saying now. So, okay. So after I worked Ontario shows, by the way, I had a really good match with Highlander Robbie, who wasn't like in WWF at the time. Like it was before he went there. Yeah. Like, so that was like, we were kind of like the reject crew in a sense. It was like Eddie Osborne would book me, who he was extra good to me, like really good to me. Like, but yeah, so from there I did the Ontario shows. Then I went to Mexico. So I showed up in Mexico, same way I showed up everywhere else. Didn't know anything, didn't know the language. And then the hugest mistake I made was I know nothing about Mexican culture. I know nothing about like important dates. I show up like a moron the night before Independence Day. So there is not a hotel room to be found in the whole city.
Oh, no.
Like nothing. So I'm just like, I'm not going to out this person, but I'm going to tell the story. So like there was a guy who was working in Mexico that I knew. And I said to him like, hey, can you give me like an address, like something? Like, I don't need you to call them for me. Like, can you just give me? And he's like, nope, I'm not giving you anything. Like, I don't want to be responsible for like what happens to you there. I said, no, I'm not going to say I know you. I just need to know where to go. Nope, I'm not going to say anything. Okay. So I land in Mexico City, get in a taxi. And then I'm like, take me to like CMLL head office. Guy's like, okay. And then he like takes me to Arena Mexico. And then I just like walked in there. Like there's like it's a huge arena. It's like basically like the carbon copy of the Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
So like there's like 80 entrances and like you don't know which one to go in. Like you go in the garage and it's like that's just where the fans park. You know, like I didn't know where to go. So it took me like an hour to navigate like with a luggage in my hand, like how to get around. And then I finally like get in and they're like, there was one girl there who spoke English and she's like, you know, like, what do you want? And I said, well, I want to wrestle. And she's like, well, you know, like who sent you here? I said, I sent myself. And then she's just like, okay, she's talking to me. She's like, you know, today is like, whatever, the eve of Independence Day, which is a huge deal. And I'm like, well, I don't know, like what hotel should I stay at like close by? And they're like, you're not getting a hotel. And then I'm like, I'm not. And they're like, no. So then she was very nice though. And she took me to, she set me up with Ringo Starr was like a huge, like he's a very old man, but like he was like a big star. So he bought up a bunch of apartments in Mexico City in like the worst area. Like I'm talking, there's TV shows on Amazon Prime about do not go to this area. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's called Tepito.
And how old were you? How old
when
were
I went
you?
there, I was like 23.
Oh geez. Okay. Yeah.
I think like, yeah, around there. Yeah. In my early 20s. So I went there. So a guy picked me up who's like kind of an agent. And then like he drove me there, which was very nice of him because he didn't put me in a cab. And then I go there and then I go to this apartment. And it's like a really long apartment with like 7 or 8 rooms in there where guys wouldn't like live there, but like say like, I don't know, they have to be in Mexico City for whatever reason. They were too cheap to like pay the $25 for a hotel. They would just stay at Ringo's or maybe they had a relationship with him. I don't know. But I went there and it was just like go walking up the stairs. You just hear this fucking dog barking. And I'm looking around and I'm like, you know, I'm not like into like that whole scene or like drug scene or nothing like that. Like, but you're looking around, you're like, oh yeah, you can get killed here easily. Like I just kind of get that vibe. So I'm like, okay, so like hear the dog barking. I'm like, that's obviously the drug house, you know, like, and then like, I'm like, okay, so I'm staying here. And then I walk in there and it was just disgusting. Like just sitting on that toilet seat was like, there was bugs everywhere. Like, you know, like, well, think about it. There's a bunch of guys that don't live there, but are staying in the rooms. So how well is people maintaining that? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So, you know, I stayed there at the beginning and then like I go to the arena and then I'm hooked up with a guy named Memo Diaz. And then he's like, I do the training. So like I went and trained with him and then they liked my look and stuff like that. And then I went and trained with him and the training there is like a huge work. Like anyone who's been to Mexico, like when you do the training, it's like they kill you. So I did the training, met a lot of guys. I was working out. It was very cheap to live there, like very affordable. I didn't have a lot of money and like, you know, like I know my parents love me and stuff like that, but like my dad works like 16 to 18 hours a day. Like I can't ask him for money because I want to be a wrestler. You know what I mean? Like it's like, go get a job. So it's like, okay, but like you're getting hot food in Mexico for like $5-6 a day. And I got sick like real bad. And I couldn't explain to the pharmacist what was wrong with me because I didn't know Spanish. So I was spending that like money I didn't have on the wrong medication.
Oh no.
And yeah, there was a man who like would see me like basically looking paler than like the Undertaker in the 90s, you know, like walking up and down the street. And he's just like, you know, like, and he spoke a little bit of English. He's like, what's wrong? I'm like, oh, this is what's happening. I'm like, it's bad. And then like took me to the pharmacy, got me the right medication. So I got that. And then like did the training. That worked out for me. And then Memo ran a lot of house shows for in Mexico City and like Estado de Mexico, it's like the outskirts for CMLL, like just all the house shows. So just to put in perspective for you, there's about 100 shows a week happening just in Mexico City.
Whoa.
And yeah, and like let's say maybe 15 of them are like garbage flea market shows. So there's about like 85 well-paid, like, you know, packed houses a week.
Wow.
That's just that's just in like the city and like Estado de Mexico. I don't know now. I'm talking about then.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's the same now. yeah, so like there's that going on. So Memo's like, okay, like bring your stuff and then like we'll see what happens. So I'm like, okay. So um I caught a break where it was like someone missed the flight, didn't make the show. So they're like, okay, you're going in. Now, before I'm going in, this is what they started to tell me. Because I was going to that training, I was dying. Because you got to think, Mexico City, the altitude alone, it takes a
Mm-hmm.
while to adjust to that. Like you blow your nose, it's black. Like, so,
Oh.
I was working because like a lot of pollution and the altitude is so high. So it's like hard to
Mm-hmm.
breathe. Right. So,
Yeah.
I'm working my ass off. I'm like, flying around like Rey Mysterio. Like I went down there, I was about like probably like 215. And like after a month of training, I was like 190. Like I just like losing weight. Like I couldn't keep weight on because like, I got the like Montezuma's revenge or whatever for like a week. And then like, just training. And like all my life was like wrestling. And then I would learn Spanish by myself because they would have like shows like Friends and Will and Grace and all that stuff.
Mm.
It would be on like 3 or 4 times a day, like the same episode.
Oh,
And they
okay.
would, but no, they would speak in English, but then they would have like Spanish subtitles.
Yeah.
So like I bought notebooks and I would just like Chandler would say this, and I'd remember from the first episode, okay, like you got to time it. So I'm writing down the right stuff, like what he said. So like that was all my life was like I'd work out, like do the wrestling training, which was like torture. And then I would like basically like try and force myself to learn Spanish because I'm like, if I don't learn, I'm probably gonna get killed. And
So
then like it was
you
like,
basically learned Spanish from the same episodes? Is that how you taught yourself?
yeah, like Will and Grace, Friends, I forget what other show, maybe like ER or one of those old shows. And then there was shows that are like American, but like no one even knows have ever heard of them. Like all the garbage they probably sent there. So like I was learning like, yeah, basically like Friends, Will and Grace, like mainly those shows were what taught me. But that was like my job. And then like I will pat myself on the back for this. 3 months later, I was like speaking 70%.
Wow.
A year later, I could read and write. Like
Holy.
I would fuck up with the accents. Like I remember like someone asking me how long I wrestled for, and like I was like saying like, oh, I've been wrestling for 4 assholes, and like and like because like okay, so like I would tell you like año is year, ano is asshole, right? So
Oh,
I'd be like
okay.
4 assholes. So the guy's like talking to me, and I'm saying 4 assholes, and everyone's laughing, and I couldn't figure it out. So I had to learn the accents, but I do pat myself on the back for that because like it was a game changer for me, and I'll get into more why it was. But my first match ever was due to someone missing their flight. And before that, when I was asking like Memo and other guys, like, hey, when am I going to get to work? Like, when am I going to get like a chance in the ring? And they were like, look, this is the problem with you. They're like, we can't put you in like the second match, but you're not good enough to be in the semi-main or main event. So just so people actually understand, because everyone thinks they know about like Lucha Libre, it's like there's 5 matches on every show, and your placing on the card matters. It's
Oh.
not like random. It's like
Mm-hmm.
if you're a semi-main guy, you're a semi-main guy. If you're a main guy, you're a main guy. The opening match is like the opening match, and then like the second match is usually like either females or like the minis, like the midgets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then like there's a story, like the whole show is a story. So it was semi-main, and like I'm thinking the whole time, like, okay, I'm a foreigner. So like they were telling me like some guys are saying like don't wear a mask because then like you could say you're a foreigner, but are you really a foreigner? And then other guys were like wear a mask because you make money off it. And then so anyways, that day I had no mask, and they're like, you're gonna be a baby face and you're working like these guys. Now I think the good thing was I didn't know who anyone really was down there. Like I obviously, because he's Canadian, I knew who Vampiro was. And
Mm-hmm.
then like I knew like some of the old WCW guys, like the Vianos, like I knew who they like, you heard of them and stuff. But like my first match was like with royalty, and like I didn't even know who they were. And I think it was like a good thing. Like,
Wow.
because
Yeah.
I wasn't really like, but I also wasn't nervous because I was just like, my whole mentality and everything I did with wrestling was like, if I don't make it, I'm still young enough where I have a life. So it's like, I don't want to be strung along. It's like, if I'm the shits and I'm not going to make money at doing this, I'll just go get a job. Like, I don't know what kind of job, but I'll just figure something out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the match. I did what these fuckers trained me to do. And I walk in the back and everyone shit on me. Like everybody shit on me. And I'm talking like, I didn't really know. Like, this isn't like some indie show. Like, you're walking in the back and people are telling you this. This is like guys that like are serious. Like, they're doing this for a living. Like, I'm talking Negro Casas, Blue Panther, Ultimo Guerrero, Ray Bucanero. Like, all these guys that are like huge stars are like shitting on me, but I don't know who they are. And they're like, who the fuck do you think you are, Rey Mysterio? I'm like, hold on. None of you spoke English before the match. Now you can all tell me I'm an asshole, in English. But yeah, they were shitting on me. And then I'm like, well, what's going on? So I'm sure like a lot of people know, like Mexico and Japan have like a huge like boyfriend girlfriend relationship. They love each other. Like, so there's always Japanese guys in Mexico and there's always Mexicans in Japan. Mm-hmm. So like the Japanese guys like speak English. And like there was one great guy, Veneno, Panamanian guy, like he spoke English well as well. And they're going to me like, yeah, they're basically telling you like, you're like a foreigner. Like you're just supposed to do like kick, punch, clothesline, like that kind of stuff. They're like, no one needs to see you trying to be like us. Like it was like, that's not what you're here for. And I'm like, but no one ever fucking told me what I'm here for. But like I said earlier, wrestling's weird. No one tells you shit, so why would you make me, like 5 hours a day, almost die, flying around, running all over the place, doing all this stuff. And then when it comes to like the day where like people are actually going to see this, they say, don't do that. Like, does that make any sense? No. That's why I say it's a huge work. It's a big work. So I did that match. And then I guess they were kind of happy, like, because then they, I started to work, like I was like, say maybe like 2-3 times a week. And like the cool thing was like, at the time, like, I don't mind talking money because like, whatever, like I'm not in the business now, so it doesn't matter. And I'm not bragging. I'm just, like you work in the indie shows, you're making like $20 if you're lucky. And then it's like your first payout is like $150. And then you're like, wow, like I'm stepping it up. But like at the same time, I'm getting ripped off because like, if I was like a regular in that spot, based on the amount of people that were there, I'd probably be walking out of there with like $300 to $500. But I'm not complaining because I'm getting an opportunity. I'm not a mark. I'm not working for free. So it's all good. So I'm getting these shows. And then just like luck and opportunity. But then like you get introduced to other promoters, and I wasn't signed with anybody at the time. So it wasn't like I had to be loyal. The only rule that they told me was like I couldn't work AAA based shows. Oh. So like I can work any independent show or CMLL show, but if I cross over and work AAA shows, then like it's kind of like what we talked about earlier. Like the stuff that's not good is like promoters saying, hey, if you work there, you can't work here. It was kind of like that. So I was like, I'm fine with this. So like I would go work like now.
Yeah, but is that because like they're the two really big companies? So they kind of treat it like, WWF and WCW type thing?
Yeah, and I also think that it's a little more personal. Like AAA basically was like guys that branched off from CMLL. Like they just left CMLL and opened AAA. Antonio Pena was an employee of CMLL for many years. Maybe, I don't know for sure, maybe even a partner. And then he kind of left, but he took some top stars with him, right? So it's like there's two sides of the tracks, like AAA and CMLL. And like there's a lot of like the Mexican guys that go back and forth, like the same way like WCW, WWF. But like I don't know. At the time for me, it was just like, I just want to work. So I went and had a meeting with like the owner of another company called IWRG, which is like Arena Naucalpan. And then he's like, okay, like, he's like, yeah, I'll use you. He's like, you have a show here Thursdays and Sundays. So he's like, I'll try you out and then I'll let you know. He's like, but I want you to wear a hood. And I'm like, I don't care. So I wore a hood, and then they called me Steel Man 2. Who like Steel number 1 was like Val Venus.
Oh, wow.
So I guess like, yeah. And then like I didn't even know that until after, but like so I did that, and then like working with the hood was like a horrible experience. Like I didn't like it at all. Like the fucking thing turned sideways, and like I was wrestling against the Vianos, and they called for like a double backdrop, and I'm like, but I can't even fucking see. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna break my neck. And then like, and then they were very nice people. Like they're like excellent men, like all of them. And like I know one of them, Arturo, he just passed away, so condolences to his family. But like they're great people. Like they would teach me, like, look, if you want to get comfortable in this mask, the only way to do it is to walk around your room with it on. Like just kind of live with it. And then, but I only wore that hood like for them. And then I had like a humongous learning experience. So I was gone for, it was under a year and a half, but like you figure September to like the following Christmas. So I was like, I was getting like steady work, and like I was making money and living, like not making good money, but let's say I make $150, like a night. And it's like, so cheap to live over there. So it was like, you're wrestling like 5 shows a week. Like everything was like, I thought going well for me. And then like I had my gimmick with the mask, and then I had like, no mask, baby face gimmick. And like I'm working with these humongous stars, which I'm learning like, okay, these guys are the real deal. And then I'm like, fuck, I just want to go home for Christmas. Like, I just want to see my family and stuff like that. So like I told them, like, I'm going home for Christmas. And then they're like, yeah, go ahead, have fun. Like everything's great. And like wrestling is bullshit. So I come home for Christmas. I go back like 10 days later, and they completely blackballed me.
Oh no.
Like, yeah. And then I'm like, luckily, like I had some friends, so they told me the truth. And they're like, I'm like, why the fuck am I not getting work? I'm like, what happened? And then someone said to me, they're like, well, why do you leave? And then I said, well, what do you mean I left? Like, I want to go see my family. Like, they don't care about your family. It's business. They're like, Christmas season is like the hottest. You could have been working 2 shows a day. So I was like, okay, I learned. But at the same time, because I guess like I'm a salty prick, I'm like, all right, I figured out a little bit of the way the system works. I don't need Mexico City. So I'm like, fuck it. So whenever I'd have days off, the closest beach town was Acapulco. So I used to go to Acapulco and hang out there. So I'm like, well, if I'm not working, why am I going to hang around here? So I just packed my shit and I went to Acapulco. And so I'll just live on the beach until they get over the fact that, like I'm not blackballed anymore, or they just never use me. Like, or I'm just done. So I went to Acapulco, and then when I was there, I'm like, oh, I know that they have an arena there. So one day I went to the arena. I just took a cab to the arena. I went in there and I was watching them train. And one of the guys who's like teaching over there, he's like, I know who you are. And then, so like Alberto Del Rio?
Yeah. So
I struck up a pretty good friendship with him. And I know like he's really good friends with Liz Mark Jr. He was in WCW as well. And he's from Acapulco. So I was like, like I said, yeah, I worked with Liz Mark before, and I was talking to the guy there. And then he's like, okay. He's like, we have a show every Wednesday and Sunday. Like, you want to work? Like, yeah. They're like, well, it's not the same money as Mexico City. I'm like, I don't care. I'll work. So I worked there. And then I met someone who kind of changed my life, like in a good way. There's a family called the Peniche family down there. So to me, they have the ultimate family, because there's like 8 siblings. And like, what I mean by ultimate family is like, I think like 2 of them are lawyers. One of them's an accountant. One owns a travel business. One owns this other business. Like if you're opening a business, you need an accountant, a lawyer, and like whatever, right? Well, they have it all like in-home family. So one of the brothers is like, I'm into wrestling. So he's like, I want you to work exclusively for me. And then I'm like, okay, what's that mean? And he's like, well, any shows that are in the state of Guerrero, he's like, you're going to work for me. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, how's this work? So he's like, I'm going to pay you $1,000 a week, and you work for me. I don't care where else you go work, but when I need you, you work for me first. So yeah, I signed a deal with him. So just pay me $1,000 a week, and I was working for him. And then a lot of his shows, like he'd use guys like, if the Mexico City guys, he wasn't using local guys, like he needs to draw. So he'd be booking like Mystico and Dos Caras Jr., who's Alberto Del Rio, like all those guys. So then they're like, hey, what are you doing down here? Like, to me. And then I'm like, well, fuck, I got blackballed in Mexico City, so I just came over here. And then like, oh, smart. So I was working the shows, and like, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but like in Mexico, like when I worked there, like I think I was in like great shape. And I had an exotic look. So like a lot of like kids and females liked me. And that was the hardest thing to draw down there. Right.
Mm.
So this Paniche guy kind of used me as that draw where he's like, I'm not going to put you in the main event. Cause like that was when Mystical really took off. So he's like, those guys are there, but he's like, I'm going to keep you semi-main. So he kept me semi-main, and majority of the time my tag partners were like Del Rio and like, I don't know if you ever heard of him, like Super Porky
No,
or
I
like
haven't.
Porky. Yeah, he was in like WWF for a bit. His sons are like humongous stars in AAA now. But Porky, his family, like they're called the Brazos, like the arms. So they're like a family of four, and they kind of run the wrestling union down there where it's like, if you want to book somebody, you contact them, and then like they get you bookings.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it's like, so being in with them is like huge. So so Porky was like, because my partner's off, and he's like, oh, you know, like the kids really like you, like the girls are liking you, like you're. They would have a thing where you don't sell your own pictures, but after the shows, they do Polaroids for $10. So like if like they pick me, it was like I get 5, the promoter gets 5. So like they would do that with certain guys. And then he's like, you know, like, I think it's good. And then he's like, come, like, you know, he's like, next time you're in Mexico City, he's like, come by the office, call me. So I went right back to Mexico City, like right away. And then I'm like, and then I called like Del Rio and I said like, hey, like, I'm going to go to Sindicato. Like, can you bring me in? So he brought me right in there and like said, like, you know, this guy's good. Like, fuck whatever. Like, you know, like no one even cared about like the fact that I went home for Christmas at that point. But like, he's like, get this guy work. So then they were getting me work too. So I had my guarantee of like $1,000 a week as long as I didn't miss those shows that are in Guerrero.
Yeah.
And I was free to do whatever else I wanted. So like in a year, I make $52,000 a year from one guy, like just one guy. And I'd probably work like, I don't know, maybe like 80 matches for him, you know, like a year. Yeah. And then like the coolest stuff was like, now I'm getting booked nationally. So I was like, I'm going to like Monterey, I'm going to Guadalajara, I'm going like everywhere. Like I'm going to villages that like you needed to take buses and like donkeys to get to, you know, like I'm just like working. Like it was just like, that's like actually like my career is wrestling. And it was great. And then, like I said, like some promoters wanted me in a hood, other ones didn't. Like I didn't care. And then like meeting all these guys, like Dr. Wagner is like humongous star, and he would say to me like, wear a mask. Then I'm like, yeah, I'm like, but like, he's like, yeah, wear a mask. Fuck them. He's like, they're going to pay you for it. You know, like, and I'm like, okay. So I'd wear a mask for this promoter. And I remember one time specifically, I had a show in Iguala, and then I had the day before, I was booked in Monterey, and like the promoter like was like, yeah, you take the bus from Mexico City to Monterey. And I tell like Kenisha, like, okay, I got to be in Monterey, but then I got to be back in Iguala for you. And then he's like, how much they give you for the bus? And I'm like, oh, they gave me like $60. And then he's like, okay. He's like, just take a flight. I'll pay the rest of it. You know, like, so yeah. So now I'm like really like feeling like a star, because now I'm like, I don't have to take a bus. You know, like I get to fly. You know, like, so it was all business for him. And then like he would set me up with like signings and stuff. Like I would get paid to like go to a gym and like take pictures. And I'm like, who the fuck do these people think I am? Like I'm nobody, you know, like, but it's all smoke and mirrors where they just build you to be the star. And then I got in a soap opera.
Soap opera?
Oh yeah, you didn't know that?
No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So I got on like the original Ugly Betty.
Oh, really?
Well, I have to watch when I say original, because the original is from Colombia. But
okay.
So they did like, it wasn't like a soap opera like on the day. So in Mexico they have like telenovelas that are like when we were probably really young kids, like they used to have shows like Falcon Crest and Dallas and all that stuff like that. So it was like every night, like prime time, like 8 to 9 p.m. So I got on the soap opera, and then that kind of just changed a lot for me, like just getting on that show. But it was interesting because like I found out like they were asking, like there's a guy Cibernetico who's like I think he's still popular, but he was super popular back then, and he worked for AAA, and like they wanted him to be on it, and he said like, fuck it, I don't want to do it. But then like for me it was like, okay, go take bumps, or I'm gonna go like do this bullshit acting, you know, like. So I'm like, I'll just do the acting thing. So I did that, and it was kind of like when people ask me, I say it was just through like a talent scout, but it was kind of 50-50 where it's like let's face it, it's all who you know, right? So
Yeah.
one of the main actors on the show, his girlfriend at the time, I don't know, maybe it's his wife now, but his girlfriend at the time was from Canada. She was from Calgary.
Oh.
So they were watching a show, and then like I don't know who anyone is. Like I said, I watch Friends, Will and Grace, like that was my thing. Like, like that's all I watch. So like like they're like, okay, like this guy's girlfriend's from Canada. I'm like, yeah, but who the fuck is the guy? And then they're like he's this big star, and I'm like, okay, like I don't know who he is. So I was like, okay, so I'm like, whatever, like nice to meet you.
You're
Like I'm
so
not a dick.
nonchalant.
Like, yeah, you want to know what it is? Like as much as I'm not a mark for myself, I'm not a mark for other people. Like it was just like if you're a nice person, I love you. You know what I mean? Like, but if it's like if you're gonna like big shot me, then like fuck you. Like I'll treat you like little piece of shit. Like I'm just bitter that way. Like I just think everyone should just kind of be nice to each other. So, anyways, I met the guy and he was super nice. And then like, because you get like soiled and poisoned with like wrestling mentality where everything's false promises.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the guy's like, where do you live? I said, well, I live in Acapulco, but like I travel a lot, so I'm there 2 days a week. And he's like, you ever see the boat? Like the yacht with the Canadian flag? And then I'm like, yeah, kind of that one stands out to me, like being from Canada. And then he's like, that's mine. He's like, it's registered in Canada for tax purpose. And I'm like, okay, like cool. And then he's like, this is my girlfriend. She's from Calgary. And it was like, all right, great. Like it's awesome to meet people that first of all speak English, but secondly, especially like Canadian, because I'll tell you something, like the only people you meet in Mexico that speak English or like are from like the States or Canada are either there for business or there because they know they're going to do life in prison, like in wherever country they're originally from. So like that's who you're meeting, like that speaks English. So I was like, cool. So like met her, and then like he's like, yeah, like give me your number and we'll exchange numbers. And he's like, I know we're going to be doing some filming in the next few months in Acapulco, like maybe we have you on. And I'm like, okay. But I'm thinking in my head, like, this is like wrestling. Like, I've been booked for WrestleMania 40 times, still never happened. So I'm like, this guy's lying. And then it actually ended up coming through. Like,
wow.
Where like the guy called me, he's like, you gonna do this episode? And then I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And then he's like, okay. So I went there, and it was originally supposed to be one episode. Like I was like on a date with someone, and then like I'm supposed to beat up the main actor. Like that was like what the story was. And then like, so in between like takes, like it's such a long day. You're there for like 15 hours for like, I don't know, 3 minutes of work.
Yeah.
The stunt people, I was like talking to them, and then like the director's like, hey, this guy can speak Spanish, like give him lines. And then like they didn't even know I could speak Spanish because I was always speaking English to the guys that spoke English. So I'm like, okay. So they're like, say this. And I'm like, I say it. And they're like, oh, you speak well. Like, you don't even sound like a foreigner. I'm like, okay. So then like, they're like, okay, we need you to act. So they're like, we want you to sound like a foreigner. And I'm like, okay. So like I said my line, and then like, like I did the scene, and then I'm like, okay, like this is it. And then they're like, yeah, this is it. I'm like, all right, great. And then they're like, we'll be in touch. I'm like, yeah, sure. Like whatever. And then they're like, you know what? They're like, we kind of like that. They're like, so I ended up doing like a total, like, I didn't have like a main character or anything. I wasn't special, but it was like I was recurring. So I think like altogether, the way they cut it up was like 39 episodes that I recur. So it was like, yeah.
That's
so
a lot.
Like, yeah, like it's how they cut it. You know what I mean? And the only reason I know that is because my stupid wrestling mentality, where like at the beginning was like, they're like, okay, they're like, it's a union. So I'm like, acting. I'm like, that's great. And then they're like, okay, so you need a representative. So this person's going to be the representative, which I actually kind of knew the lady, like not personally, but I seen her around because she lived in Acapulco. So she's like, okay, I'm going to be your representative. I'm like, that's fine. And I'm like, I want $1,500 a day US. And then they're like, she's like, no, that's not how it works. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. I don't give a shit. Like I was just being like a dick. Like, cause I was like, I don't know, like actors are rich. They must get paid well. So I'm like, let me just ask for that and see what happens. And then they're like, no, you want residuals. And I'm like, I don't want residuals. And the lady who doesn't know me, like yelled at me like she was my mother and was like, you shut the fuck up and just take what I'm going to give you because it's going to be worth it for you in the long run. And she is 100% correct because from 2005, 6, I get residuals to this day. And like, I have a place in Florida and like, like the huge Latin community there. Like I can watch myself, like at least one time I'm in Florida a year, I will see myself on TV. Like, so I didn't know what show it's on. Like I told you, I'm a Will and Grace and a Friends guy, like in Mexico. Like I didn't know like that it was that big of a deal. But yeah, so after I did that, it opened a host of opportunities, like not only in wrestling and other stuff too. Like I said, like you just go to like, I don't know, like go to like a gym and like just do a signing for 2 hours, and it's like you're getting paid good money. And then another opportunity that came from it was I opened up some bullfights. So I met,
Bullfights?
yeah, like they have bullfighting down there,
Yeah.
which I still don't know like my opinion on it. Like I'm not 100% like, I don't know if I like it or not. But what
Uh-huh.
ended up happening was there was a man there who was like pretty like powerful guy. And I thought he was strange because like I go eat at this one place in particular because when I was like younger, I went to Acapulco on vacation, and there was a spot where like people would go eat because like the guy said all the food is from Canada and the US, so you wouldn't get sick. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like the place you'd go to after the clubs. So because I knew that place, I'm like, oh, I'll just go eat there. So like I would go eat there like quite regularly, and there was a restaurant kind of attached to it on the side because it's all outside.
Mm-hmm.
And the man would be like, hey, I want to invite you to my restaurant for lunch or dinner, like on me. And I'm just like, oh, this guy's weird. Like, no thanks. Like, I don't know. I was just like, I don't know. Like, why does everyone want to be like so friendly? Like, like, and then like I just kind of hesitant. And then I'm like, okay, like I went during the day one time and I went and I sat with him, and he's still my friend to this day. Like great guy. He's got a lot of connections. But he's like, hey, like he's like, have you ever been to the bullfights? I'm like, nah, I never been. And then he's like, okay, well, he's like, like for whatever's going on in the country at the time, he's like, attendance been down locally. He's like, we're thinking maybe like a wrestler, a guy who's on a soap opera. He's like, maybe if you come and you just like, cut a promo, like basically saying like, hey, I'm not from Canada, but I live here, and I love the bullfights, and come and bullshit. So
Yeah.
they were paying me to do that, so I just go hang around bullfights, like, and like so all this like great opportunity was happening, and I didn't really feel like I kind of deserved it just from being there, like so yeah. And then like the wrestling happened, and then I met great friends. Like I still keep in contact with a lot of the guys from down there, and I truly learned like that it's a business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only sour points that ever came there happened from people from Ontario.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
I'll give you an example. Like people would go down there for like 2 weeks, and then like they would work shows for like pretty much free, because
Mm-hmm.
like for them it's like they just want to come back to Ontario and say, hey, I worked these 5 shows in
Yeah.
Mexico.
Yeah.
But what they're not understanding is like I sacrificed a lot. Like I lived down there, like it wasn't like I was there on vacation. So
Mm-hmm.
like you hear that, and then it's like, I'd get a little upset because I'm like, you fucking three assholes are working for cheaper than I do. So the promoter would tell you straight, I don't need you because I got these three gringos like coming to work for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, well, who are these fuckers? And then it's like, guys, and then it's like, well, but I blame their coaches.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, like I like not in like I don't have heat like personally, and I don't have malice towards this person, but like that squared circle guy fucked up a lot of shit, because like they would go to Mexico for 2 weeks on vacation and then go back and tell everyone, hey, this is what you do, or this is like how it is. And this is what I was told. So I could be wrong. So maybe it's wrong of me to even say this publicly. But from what I was told was like they're luchadors. They went to Mexico for a little bit. They came back, then like they were sending like their students, like referring their students to go down there. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like, but what you're not understanding is you're taking food off people's plate, like so like I'm friends with Hornet. So Hornet was one of the guys, and was like, like, what are you doing? Like this, and it was like once you kind of calm down about the situation, realize it's not that serious and whatever. But it was one of those things where it was like people don't understand that in like a place like Mexico, that can get you killed, because like like even if you're not okay, never mind me, I'm not important, but like you're taking food off my plate. What if you're taking food off a Mexican's plate? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's been working all this time. So that's where I feel like the biggest problem was. I don't know now. I don't think it even matters now, but like then it was kind of like one of those things where it's like, you show up in Japan, you do all that, and it's like, they throw you in a show because you're cheap labor. Like, well, someone's got to stay at home for you to get an opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take that into consideration, where it's like, if you're challenging for a job and doing it like honestly, like if the other guy sits at home because you took a spot, that just means that you're better, or you did something better, or you're more marketable, because wrestling's fake. So it doesn't matter how good you are, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
there's something about you that makes you better. So yeah, I had a little bit of like, I don't know, not heat, but it was just kind of like, what are you guys doing? And it's like, I know they're not bad guys, and I know like there wasn't the intent. It's just like, no one taught you this, like you should have been taught this, like not to do that stuff. Because I don't know, does it make sense what I'm saying?
It does. Like I had no clue of what life was like in Mexico.
Yeah.
So this is all new to me, and I don't think I would have known that. Like
Mhm.
if the trainers, the coaches know that about Mexico, then yes, that's something that they should, you know, teach
Yeah.
their students about. But yeah, I had no idea. Like I had no idea it was like mainly business.
Yeah. There's a guy down there, like his name's Pieroth. Like big star, like big heel. This guy wouldn't shake my hand for 3 years until like he felt that I earned his respect.
Wow.
Like, and I'm talking like I've worked hundreds and hundreds of shows with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, like I would still always stick my hand out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he would just be like, get the fuck out of here, like, and I'm like, okay. And then one day I'm just like, I think it was in Reynosa or something. It stood out to me because, like, imagine that for 3 years, you're traveling with this guy, like you're on buses, flights, whatever it is, shows, and the guy will not shake your hand. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, all of a sudden, the guy comes and sits down to me and is like talking to me in English, like, "Hey, buddy, you're my buddy." And I'm just like, "Is this guy hammered?" And then they're like,
I was just about to
"No,
ask that.
yeah." And then he's like, "You're good, you're good." Like you did good, you did good. And I was like, "Oh, I wonder if like maybe like because I finally worked with him, like
Uh-huh.
beforehand, maybe I didn't work with him." So I was like, like that's how serious these guys take it. Like, do you know who Dark Angel Sarah Stock is?
Yes.
Yeah, so like she is a huge star down there. Like
Mm-hmm.
she
Yeah.
did like super amazing. So I talked to her a lot, and like even for her, it's like she had like a rough grind. Like she started in Monterrey and worked her way to Mexico City. Like everyone's goal is to get to Mexico City. That's the
Mm.
goal. If you're a wrestler from anywhere in that country, you want to get to Mexico City. So, like even for her, it was harder because she's female. So there's less female matches.
Mm-hmm.
So, like when people always say to me, like obviously Vampiro, Conan, those guys were like in a time where they were like trendsetters and like they did amazing. But if you really like break down kind of Sarah's career, it's like she's a way bigger star than like anybody, because
Mm-hmm.
she's a foreigner and a female and like less opportunity. And she like went like from working in like a women's wrestling company,
Mm-hmm.
and then like made her way to like, okay, working like the guy shows, and then eventually like I think she even main evented like Arena Mexico one. Like
Oh,
that's
wow.
like, yeah, like there's a lot of like unknowns that like people didn't know. And like the funny thing is, remember I told you I went to Manitoba?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in Manitoba, two people that are like, one's a big star right now and one who was a big star, were learning how to do front rolls. So like Sarah was learning how to do a front roll when I showed up in Manitoba.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was like learning wrestling before the shows. And Kenny Omega.
Oh.
Yeah. So like I don't know them. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
Sarah because of Mexico, but like she didn't remember. But it was just like I never met Kenny, but like yeah. So it's just like, see how long like the journeys take to get to where you're getting to. And then wrestling is like waves in a sense where it's like I don't know how I can say this. It was kind of macho when I was doing it. Like it was uh like you kind of had to be a man's man to survive,
Yeah.
because there was
Yeah.
like okay, the politics is always there, but there was like, I witnessed violence, like people fighting, not bitching and screaming. But
Mm-hmm.
it made sense to me in Mexico, because like when you look around, it's like this is what these people do to like eat and survive. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
serious. And I was fortunate enough at the time, like, I'm not Hulk Hogan or The Rock, like, I'm nobody, but I made a living, like,
Mm-hmm.
so I understood it, and then I appreciated like all the sacrifice I had to make. So I wasn't going to piss the money away. So that's when, like basically I invested it. But then I think it was like 2008, 9, there was like bad, like presidential change. And then the economy, like took a hard hit. Like imagine you're in an arena and like every week you're working in front of 12,000 people. Well, 12,000 turns into 500. That's a humongous drop.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was. So that's when I was like, I think I'm done. Like I was like, I'm just time for me to figure like what's the next phase of my life. And that's when I came back to Ontario. But I also like I'd still like do tours there. So I'd go like say go back for 2 weeks, come home, like come back to Ontario for a month, go there for 5 days, come back here for a couple months. Okay. So it's kind of like part-time.
Yeah.
And then that's when I kind of returned to like Ontario indie wrestling, which I didn't have the intent to be honest.
It just kind of happened.
No, you know who like Donnie is? Like he had the show, the O Show.
Yep.
Yeah. So I ran into or saw him or something. For some reason I talked to him, and then he's like, like I'm booking this promotion. Like, why don't you come? Like, I'm not interested. And then I'm like, I understand. Like, you're not going to pay me what I want, and I also don't deserve much because I'm not a draw in Ontario, right? Like, I'm fair and realistic. Like, I don't deserve to be paid much. But he's like, no. He's like, just come. He's like, your old partner Burns is on the show and I'll tag you with him. I'm like, okay, if that's the case, like, then I'll just go have like, kind of like a reunion kind of thing. And then I'm done. Right. So I went to the show. I had no clue. This guy was like, oh, special guest. And I'm like, I'm no fucking special guest. Like I'm nobody to the fans here, like, and I think he hyped me more than like I needed, like than I wanted to be and deserved to be. And then, you're kind of in that web and it's kind of hard to untangle it because like I felt like, okay, I'm using this for ring time because I'm still like getting bookings like in Mexico or like Central South America. I went to Africa, like, like I'm still getting bookings, right? So like I worked in Europe, like, so I'm like, okay, this is my wrestling training because my coach, Don Kolob, he doesn't have school anymore. And like, I don't really have a relationship with anybody to go use their ring. Like, I still don't feel welcome, like in Ontario. So I was working the shows and like, I just tell everyone the truth. Like, you're not drawing, so you're not going to pay me shit. So it's like, I just don't want to feel like an idiot and I can't do it for free. So I started working the independent shows in Ontario again. That's where I met Josh and I met like a lot of those guys. And I tried my hardest not to be the guy who said like, this is what they do in Mexico, And then like, I met RJ, who I have a relationship with because like he lives like close to me. So it's like, it was one of the first guys I met. So I'm just like, if I'm going to work these shows, like, why don't we just go together, and at the time I hadn't driven for like 7-8 years. So I was like, cause I didn't drive in Mexico. I got like, you didn't have to. So, I was like, okay. So I went and did shows and like returned to the indies, and not much had changed except like kind of a younger generation crop of people who came in.
So any like more acting stuff
come
up or
I did. I did some stunt work. I did a movie called Monster Brawl. I did what's that TV show? I don't know.
Are you doing it? Are you doing it here in Canada?
Yeah, I did Monster Brawl in Canada. I did a pilot for a show in Mexico. Like it was like I fucked up on this one big time. Like it was like kind of a ripoff of Full House. And I'm like, I don't really care. Like, like this is like, sounds like a stupid show. And then like, it's still on TV now, but I didn't get it. Yeah. Whatever. Like, like, I don't know. I didn't really have aspirations of being an actor or anything like that. It was just something that felt like I did Monster Brawl and it was cool because like Kevin Nash was in it and Jimmy Hart and Dave Foley, like, Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall.
No, I never watched it.
Yeah, me neither. But like how I know Dave Foley is there was a show that was on every Sunday night at midnight when I lived in Mexico, and it was like teaching you how to play like Hold'em, like Texas Hold'em.
Oh.
So it'd be like a tournament and like Dave Foley was the host. Like, so he would like, and then I'm like, oh, you ever heard of the show News Radio? Like Joe Rogan was in it.
No.
Okay. So he was on that show and he's Canadian. But when I went to do this movie and I meet Dave Foley, I'm like, hey man, I said, like, I learned how to play Texas Hold'em from you, like on that show. And then like that was just my whole thing with him. And then meeting Jimmy Hart was cool. And then Nash was cool. And like me and him are still like, we talk like at least once a month, like to this day. And then I feel like my career went kind of full circle because I ended where I started.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Like, so remember I told you that guy Nick Nitro booked me on a show?
Yes.
Like my first one ever.
Oh,
yeah.
Did you have your last show there?
I had my last tour. So he ended up, I don't know what happened. Like he got money somehow. And he booked like this humongous tour, like with like all like names. Like he had like Nash, Steiner, Tatanka, the New Age Outlaws, X-Pac, the Nasty Boys. Like he had a bunch of guys on the show and then on his tour. So we went out like to Eastern Canada, which was super cool for me because I never been to Eastern Canada. So I was like, okay. So like he did some local shows. Like he did a show in Brantford with Hulk Hogan on it. Wow. Did you ever hear about that? You ever hear about that?
No.
Yeah. So he had like, that was like all the names that I just said. He had booked on the show and Hulk Hogan. So it was, that was probably like, I don't know what year it was. I think it was like maybe 2010, 11, like around there. So yeah, that was cool. And I thought it was like a great learning experience for like, well, for myself in a sense. And like a lot of like the younger guys, like RJ and I did the opening match. So that was my idea. Cause like, I kind of told RJ, I'm like, you never worked in front of a big crowd. And I'm like, RJ's a smart guy. Like one thing I'll give it is like in Ontario, we have a lot of great wrestlers, like bad business people, but great wrestlers. So like better than me. So like I let him call the stuff, but I told RJ, I'm like, there's been like fans here trying to meet Hulk Hogan since like 3 p.m. The show's supposed to start at 7. It's 8 o'clock and the bell hasn't rung yet. I said, these people are sitting on their hands. And then I'm like, call a good match. Like me and you are going to go first. Like if that's not pressure, I don't know what's pressure. Because if we suck, no, but think about it. If we sucked, now you got guys like Scott Steiner, Kevin Nash, X-Pac, Tatanka, the Nasty Boys, you know, Ted DiBiase, like every like name that's like, you know, like Drew Money is on the show. And I'm like, if we fuck it up for them, they're going to shit on us and you're never going to fucking work anywhere. So it was like kind of nice pressure. Like that's what kind of motivated me because I was very demotivated. Like coming back here, it was hard to get motivated to wrestle in front of, I don't know, 30 people.
Yeah.
Like, so, yeah, so I did those shows and then we did the tour out east. And yeah, like, I knew I was done during that tour. Like I knew it was like, I don't want to wrestle anymore. Actually, on that tour, I bought a calling card and I bought a calling card and I called Mexico and said, I want to lose my hair. Find me someone who will pay me for it. Like I'm done. Because they pay you for a haircut. Am I rambling and jumping around too much for you?
No.
Okay.
Like, sorry. I'm taking this all in. Okay,
yeah,
so
it's a little
2010, first of all, I'm just baffled that all these big stars were able to be booked. I'm trying to think if any of them were still, I'm trying to think if any of them were still with the Fed. Because around that time, they weren't letting anyone do other shows.
No. So what ended up happening was, you remember there was I don't remember what year it was. Okay. When Kevin Nash did that little thing with CM Punk, when he would like, I don't know, like he ran in the ring and like powerbomb Punk. Like they never worked each other, but like when CM Punk was champion and then Kevin Nash had a little feud with him, Nash got pulled from the tour because he went there.
Oh, okay.
So like he wasn't with them, but Steiner was with TNA because he missed like 2 shows on the tour because he had to go do some stuff for TNA.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came back. No one was with WWE at the time. Everyone was either like independent or with TNA.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because I think like Billy Gunn had just got released, and I think it was right before Road Dogg got hired to work in the office. So he wasn't a talent. He was like a writer.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I met Steiner like before that. So we kind of had a relationship. And then like I did the movie with Nash. So we had a relationship. And then I
Mm-hmm.
also found another thing is like some of the biggest assholes in wrestling, I get along with great. like, yeah. Like it's true. Like I just do. Like, you know, if I look through like my phone and I'm like, these are my wrestling friends, it's like, fuck, everyone thinks they're an asshole. Or someone does. Like, I'll give you another example. Like right before this tour, what happened was I went out for dinner one night with Santino and Randy Orton.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Orton just happened to hit it off. Like, I am like the least entertaining person on social media you ever meet, but like he followed me on social media and we talk. And like, I think too, because like I'm a big fan of his dad's.
Uh-huh.
Like the people that when I started wrestling, the people that I started to follow, like their like or look back on their careers, were people that I found when I was young made me angry. Like they emotionally like affected me. Like I'll give you an example. Like King Kong Bundy, I was terrified of, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not as big as him, so it didn't matter. I was a fan of like Mr. Perfect because I hated his guts. Fan of Ravishing Rick Rude because he would call me a sweat hog. You know, but like if you think back to when you're young and you're watching, it's like the people that you actually had a reaction to are actually the most influential people if you want to become a wrestler, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember I hated Cowboy Bob Orton because he'd always have the cast and he cheated. So I was like, this guy's a scumbag, you know, like, so when I started like getting into wrestling, it's like, if I'm going to find tape or like, rent old videos when there was video stores, I would watch like that kind of stuff. So I was talking to Randy about his dad, and then like we just talk, and then we got along. So out of the blue, he's just like, you want a job, like you want to come work with us? And then I'm like, so in my heart was like, no, like,
Mm-hmm.
but if I asked myself, like, why did I get into wrestling? It was like, I didn't even know that there was an NWA. So, it was for WWF, WWE. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, that was when I got into it. And then like I learned along the way. But at the same time, to be totally transparent, when I was in Mexico, I understood more that this is a business. Because like, you can be in the main event every night and make no money. And then when they replace you, you're nobody. No one cares.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you might have like a shelf life of like 18 months to go collect as much money as you can on the indies and do signings and shoot interviews and all this stuff. But like, what are you really? Like, so if you're going to make all these sacrifices, which are way more mental than physical, like it's such a mind fuck, like, and I don't mean it's like negative and like a downer, but like it is. It's like, especially I look at myself, all those years just being on the road by myself. And then like, yeah, I met friends and stuff like that. But I mean, like, like the people I grew up around, my family, like no one was around to enjoy any of this with me. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and you feel that after the fact. So when Orton like said to me like, hey, you want a job? And I'm like, I didn't go with my heart. I'm like, yeah, I want a job, but I didn't even want to wrestle anymore. So then like, I'm like, okay. So he's like, okay, cool. He's like, just get some shit together and give it to me and I'll give it to the office. So word must travel fast, because when I was like working shows with like Bushwhacker Luke was also on this show. Like there were a lot of names on the show. Like the Highlanders were out of WWF at the time. They were booked on these tours. Like there were many tours like in Ontario. Then they went out east. It was longer. But Tatanka's like, Jerry Sags, who's awesome. He's like, come here. And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, Luke was telling me that like they're looking at you like in WWE. And then I'm like, well, I don't know for sure. I'm like, Orton asked me if I wanted a job. And then he's like, okay, like, just kind of giving me some pointers, which I really appreciated. Mm-hmm. And then Luke said to me, he's like, this is the worst time. And then I'm like, why? And then he's like, because they're going through a transition. They're going to, I don't know how Luke knows everything. He's like, they're going to fire all these guys And then like, they're going to have new people. So you kind of don't want to get hired now. And like, it was interesting to like learn that stuff because I don't know nothing about what goes on there.
Mm-hmm.
In my head, I'm just like, look, I'm just going to, my goal would be like, if I can get on one WrestleMania and like, I didn't think it would happen, but if I could ever like work with Orton,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
I'll get myself fired the next day. I'll walk in and kick Vince McMahon in the balls. Like I'm just something to get fired. Like I don't care. Like that was my goal. Like, but yeah. So then what ended up happening was they were in Europe on some tour. So like now, okay, Road Dogg's a writer. Like Santino, I knew from like my coach, but he
Mm-hmm.
trained before me and then did a different route. And then like Orton's the one who's like pulling for me. And then Nash is there. So, and then like I had a relationship with a couple other guys that were in the company. And then, like they call me and they're like in Europe, like at a bar, like on a patio somewhere. And they're like, like, okay, send video and like do this and whatever. And then I'm like, okay, fine. So I sent a tape and then more pictures. And then like I kind of motivated myself. I was like, hey, get in shape. Because when I came back to Ontario, I didn't care anymore. So I just kind of got out of shape. So I was getting in better shape. And then I didn't hear anything. So I'm like, okay, like doesn't matter. And then I talked to Nash about it. And then he's like, you have too many of the wrong friends. And then I'm like, okay. Like, and then I'm like, okay. I'm like, you really think that's why? He's like, I don't know. He's like, there's a lot of transition, but he's like, look at who's going to bat for you. And then it kind of made sense. So it's just like Orton, they can't control, like at the time, especially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, Nash will tell him to fuck off, and he's only nice to them when he wants money, like so.
Yeah.
And then like Road Dogg, he had like a really bad like exit from the company, and then he just got rehired as a writer. But
Yeah.
he was basically like making videos in TNA, which I didn't know until after the fact, of like ripping on like the whole company and like Triple H and all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had Luke telling me that like it's not the right time to be like doing it. Wait till the transition kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, or maybe I'm shit. Like I don't know. I just didn't get the thing, and I didn't really care to have like to be a dark match guy. Like not to say that I'm too good, but I'm like, let other people have the opportunity. Like that was even my whole thing. Like when I was wrestling on the Indies, like in Ontario, it was like, look, I'm not gonna get hurt because like one, there's no money, and like two, it's like I still have other things going on. So like I can have a good match with you without having to do crazy stuff. And like if I don't know you and you're new and you were trained by a guy who's only done 30 matches, like how can I trust you to like give me a frog splash?
Mm-hmm.
Like so it's like, look, we can just tell a story. And I kind of went back to like what I learned in Manitoba and in North Carolina. It was like, remember I mentioned like you can tell a story physically with athleticism without having to, like cut promos and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then like I tried to honestly give like independent guys like Josh or like whoever I'd work with, it was like, okay, like do whatever you want. Like I don't care. I'll put you over. It's just like you call it, like you do it. And then like I'm wrestling Mexican style. I can't teach you shit. Like I don't remember how to wrestle like North American, like you know what I mean? Like or like American style. Like I'm doing something different. Like my job, if I did like 7,000 or 8,000 matches in Mexico, I had the same matches every day. I get the shit kicked out of me and then like sell. And then like I'd come back and I'd probably give 2 clotheslines. If you're lucky, I would jump off the top rope with a shoulder tackle. Like that was all I did. Like, so it's like I'm coming now like to Ontario and like, now there's a whole new style and there's a whole new type of way to work. It's like, yeah, you guide me. But, there's a lot of like, there's no confidence and all that because no one's building confidence in anyone. Everyone's ripping it away from you if you had it, right? So that's where I found like the biggest deterrent. And then like I kind of have like an attitude of like, why not be nice to people, and like I'd fall for things too because I'm human. Like people would get in your ear and it'd just be like, oh, you can't be jobbing to this guy because, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, I shouldn't, but then like when I would go home, I'd just be like, the fucking guy I'm listening to right now has never made a dime, like I'm like, why am I listening to him? Like he might be better than me in the ring, or he might have more psychology than me, but at the end of the day, it's like, do you want to be a wrestler to tell your friends you're a wrestler, or do you want to be a wrestler because it's a cool job? But what I'm trying to say is a job. And that's what I got ingrained in me in wrestling school. And I also got ingrained for me in being in Mexico. Like, do you know who Karrion Kross is?
Yes.
Okay. So I know him from outside of wrestling. I might have taken him to his first show ever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like, so, okay. So I tore both my meniscuses, like in my knees, like not at the same time. So when I tore the second one, I came back home to rehab it. And like, I kind of was getting like a little bit of, okay, what's next for me? Like I already have no knees. I already tore both rotator cuffs and supraspinatus in my shoulders. My neck's fucked up. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, what's next? So I'm like, okay, I'll rehab in like Toronto. So I was rehabbing here, and a friend of mine had a gym. Like he opened like a nice fancy gym at like Brentcliffe and Eglinton, kind of like in between Flemington Park and the Yuppie area, like Lee Side.
Yeah.
So I went there and I'd work out there, and then I'm like, okay, so I always like while I was wrestling too, I would take courses on nutrition and working out, because it's like you're paying people, you want to make sure you're paying the right people. So I went to that gym and I was like part-time personal training, like 2 hours a day, 3 days a week, like while I was doing my rehab. And Kevin is his real name. He worked there.
Oh. Oh, that's right. He is from Toronto, right? Because
Yeah,
I know he was like bouncing or something.
Yeah, like he was like born, I think he was born in the States, and then like he lived here for a while. And then like I have a good friend of mine too, who's like he was a middleweight kickboxing champion. And like he was like working with Kevin, like because Kevin's into all that shoot stuff. And then Kevin would go train with my coach Don Koloff, but like the shoot stuff, because my coach is more of a shooter opposed to like a pro wrestler. Like that was like he was like an Olympic wrestler. And then like there were guys in our gym, like remember I said we had an octagon that were like, like we had a silver medalist in like sambo, and like basically like these guys were killers. So like Kevin was really into that stuff, so he'd go with them, and they would tell me like Kevin's cool. So Kevin, I guess, is like a huge fan, like a mark. So like he would like say, hey, you're a pro wrestler, like yeah. And then I remember Eddie Osborne booked me in a show, because I was like, let me test out my knee and see if I can, if I'm okay. So I went to work with Eddie. So I asked Kevin, like, you want to come? And then he's like, yeah, okay. And then like, so I took him to the show, and like, I don't know, he thought it was amazing, and it wasn't a bad show. It was like a nice show, but like, I guess for him, it was his first experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then like, he'd keep in touch with me along, like on his journey. Like, so when he was wrestling, like in Vegas, like that's where I think he learned with like Sin and like a couple other guys.
Oh, okay.
Sin's a great guy too. And then I think that's like the school he went to. And then like I think he came to Toronto for a bit, and then I met up with him at Santino's gym one time, and then we talked, and then just via like text or whatever, like we'd keep in touch. And then he's a grounded person, I think, because like we know each other from outside of wrestling, so it's like you can't fucking big time me, because like I don't care if you're the WWE champion, I'll punch you on your way to the ring, like I think he knows that, so I think there's like a respect there. But yeah, like I'm proud of his success. I'll be honest with you, and like I'm guilty, and I should be more nicer friend. I think I stopped watching wrestling like about 4 or 5 years before like I stopped wrestling. Like I just
so you don't watch any like today. Like
no,
now.
I don't know, unless like the only way I see it is if like people I follow on Instagram, if they put it in their stories. You know what I mean? Like, but like for me to sit down and watch, like, I don't have anything against it. I pay whatever, $9.99 a month for WWE Network. And like, if I'm in a wrestling mood, I'll watch like 1987 Survivor Series. That's like nostalgic. And I can't get over like the way like 30,000 people erupt for Brutus Beefcake. You know what I mean? Like, no offense to Brutus Beefcake, but it's Brutus Beefcake. You know, like, and like, I'm like, wow, like this is when they had power. And like, it's nostalgic for me because they keep it that way in Mexico as well. Like, you truly are like a star, like being a wrestler there. Like, if you're recognizable, like if you don't have a mask on, like, and for some people, it's probably like a shitty life because everyone watches wrestling like now, like, and there's a lot of guys that like are there that never left, and like I don't blame them for never leaving, but it's kind of a shame that they're not household names. Like, you know who Mr. Aguila is?
Yes.
Like, yeah, like him. He's amazing. Like, they did so much for me. Like, when they were at Perros del Mal, like they, you know who Sabu is? So obviously you know Sabu, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Sabu made me so much money. Okay. I want to, like, I wish there was a way, like I could, like, I don't know. He probably doesn't even remember who I am, but Sabu, I'll tell you a story about Sabu just so people know how good this guy is. So like, I don't know like wrestling gossip, but like if people have anything bad to say about him, like that's their issue. But like, I'm going to just tell you what Sabu did for me.
Yeah.
So Sabu gets booked on a show from like, there's like 10 wrestling magazines in Mexico, like weekly. Like this is no monthly bullshit. Like 10 independent wrestling magazines. There's photographers also. So one of the magazines is having a show. So I was booked on the show, and then Sabu's booked on the show. So we're staying in the same hotel. And Al Barone, who went to my wrestling school, he was in Mexico at the time, like doing a program with another company. So he knows Sabu like fairly well. Like they work together. So Al Barone introduced me to Sabu, and then Sabu's like, okay, I got to go to like Arena Mexico tonight, like for something. And he's like, I'm not working, but I just want to go there and see La Park. And I'm like, okay. And then he's like, you want to come with me? And then I'm like, yeah, sure. So I'm going with him there. And then this is how cool he is. So the magazine people have a car, and they're like, we don't have room for me. Like they don't have room for me in the car. So basically I'm a jabroni, you know, like there's no room for you. So Sabu's like, fuck that. Then I'll walk there with my friend. Like, and then I'm like, yeah. He's like, if we're walking, like, it's okay. I said, yeah, it'll be okay. And then like, so he basically told him like, fucking find room for this guy or go fuck yourself. And he only knew me for like 15 minutes. Okay. So
yeah,
we go to the show. So we go through like the parking garage. So like the show's just ending. So there's like Arena Mexico at the time was drawing like 18 to 22,000 every Friday. Okay. So there's a shit ton of people. So we're walking in, and like there's people that recognize me. So like, you know, they want a picture, like take autograph, whatever. So in Mexico, I'm good looking. I'm not like as big, like I'm more in shape, and like they marketed me as like not Shawn Michaels, but like they were like, whatever, right? Like this is your gimmick, and this is why we are babyface. People are going to sympathize for you and whatever. And I'm like, okay. So people are stopping me. So Sabu's waiting. So we walk in. I'm like, sorry about that. And he's like, it's okay. He goes, I never fucking heard of you in my life. And then I'm like, yeah. I'm like, and he goes, yeah, but here, he goes, you're special. So we go like meet La Park in the change room, whatever, they talk. And then he's like, okay, we're going to go meet with like Mr. Aguila, Damien, Halloween, Hector Garza, and Pedro Guao Jr. So we're going to go meet them for dinner. She's like, you come. I said, okay. He's like, you know them, right? I said, I know them. So we go for dinner with them. So then we're a little late. The first thing Sabu says to all these big stars, like at the time, these guys were the NWO of Mexico. Okay.
yeah.
So they had a group called the Perros del Mal. So like they were hot. Like this is when they first started. So we walk in the restaurant. Sabu was like, sorry, I'm late. Nobody told me that I was hanging out with the Shawn Michaels of Mexico. So I'm like, is this a rib? Like this guy fucking with me? You know, like, so the handler, like the translator guy, which I could translate for him because I speak both, is like telling the Perros del Mal like what he just said. And then I'm like, okay. So then Mr. Aguila, like, and Damien, I used to speak to a lot. Like I always like talk to them on shows and hang out with them, and they help me because their English is pretty good. So They were like, yeah, he's like, like, yeah, they're like, Porky said the same thing about you. Like, like the kids and the girls like you, whatever. And that's like, it's not a coincidence that my bookings via them
Mm-hmm.
picked up. Like, say I was working like 4 days a week before, I was
Yeah.
automatically working 6 after that. Like I was too stupid at the time, like right then and there, to figure out like this is all because of Sabu,
Yeah.
but it was like Sabu put more money in my pocket. I don't know much about Sabu, like other than like he did some crazy shit and like he really like loves the business and he kayfabes a lot and like, he believes in like to the core. But like,
Yeah.
man, what that guy did for me, knowing me for like a couple hours was like, like
Mm-hmm.
so anytime like I meet someone who I think knows him, like from Michigan, I'm just like, hey, like if you see Sabu, you won't remember who I am, just like jabroni to him. But like this guy did so much for me. So there are like, as much as there's some shitbags in wrestling, there are really good people.
Yes. Yeah. Especially like legends. Like
Yeah.
Sabu, I see as a legend, and they don't have to take the time out of their own personal life to help you. I've worked with Sabu a few times and
Mhm.
on like the same shows, and he
Mhm.
would watch and critique
Yeah.
and then talk to me after. I'm just like, whoa, like I can't believe he's taking the time. And he was super genuine about it.
Yeah. Cause he cares.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know who else is like that? Billy Gunn.
Is he?
Billy Gunn watches every single match that there is. Like every match. Like he'll watch it. Like you don't even know that he's watching. And like you come in the back and then he's like, because when you come in the back and people are like, great match, like you didn't even watch, motherfucker. Like I like it's just a bullshit wrestling thing. Like, yeah, he was excellent, like, but it was just like, I'd come back and this guy would critique little things. He's like, you're locking up too tight. That's probably blowing you up. And then I'm like, fuck, he's right. And I'm like, he must have watched to see that. And then it'd be like the next night, your lockup was better, but you were kind of lazy taking that power slam. And then it's like, fuck, he actually watches. So I remember one night in particular, I went and followed him around everywhere to know where he watches from. And in
Yeah.
every building, he finds a quiet, like secluded part and he watches. And I watched with him. Like, and I was just like, wow, that kind of stuff was like making me like get fire back in my belly to like care more,
Yeah.
like, because like I know, like I'm not blind to it. It's like when I came back to Ontario the second time, like I have a reputation of probably being lazy, but the whole thing was just like, yes, I partially am lazy because I'm not getting paid. So I'm not going to say I'm not. But the other thing too is like, you're not trying to figure out that like, if you're looking at me as a veteran, which I'm probably the same age as most of these fucking guys, you know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? Like, because I just started young. But like, if you're looking at me as like a veteran and I'm giving you like, you're too stupid to figure out that I'm giving you the ball to ride with. Like,
Hmm.
I'm basically telling you, I'll do anything you want, just don't hurt me.
Hmm.
Like, what do you want to do? Like, I don't want to take 100 bumps for you because you're probably 60 pounds lighter than me. So that doesn't mean anything. Like, they're not understanding like where it's coming from, like, so like a partial regret I have is coming back is I wish I had a little bit more fire, like in the sense where like I wish that like I cared to stay in shape more. But like being
Hmm.
in Mexico was really hard on me, like even mentally. Like I remember like coming home for a little bit and going back. So I was like home and I was eating my mom's cooking. And like
Yeah.
when I went back, they were like, "You're fat, put a shirt on." Like, and that's the way it was. So it was like, you're working hard to stay in shape. Like that's why
Hmm.
like those like gimmicks, like could you imagine like Shawn Michaels coming back after like 5 years and he looks like Knobs from the Nasty Boys? Like, like it's like those are pressure gimmicks. Like, you know what I mean? Like even Billy Gunn, he's like Mr. Ass. Like you can't be out of shape and call yourself Mr. Ass.
Yeah.
Like so yeah, like that I kind of wish I was like maybe there, like mentally and like even physically a little bit for like the guys when I came back. But um I don't know how to put this. Like I think I was cut from a different cloth than most other wrestlers in my bringing or coming into the business. So
Hmm.
I think like that's partially why like maybe I didn't fit in as well. Because like for me, if like my first day of wrestling school was an all business approach, not a hey, let's have fun and live
Yeah.
out a childhood dream,
Yeah.
which I don't regret. Like, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? But I just never understood why like there's guys that have been wrestling for 15 years that are still taking spots away from hungry up and coming people. Like it doesn't make sense to me.
So the tour was your last, like your last hurrah, I
Yeah,
guess?
so in Ontario, like in Canada or in North America, like we went, yeah, we did that last tour. And while I was on the tour, I got a calling card. I called Mexico and I like the Peniche family,
Oh,
like that
yes.
guy.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
said, like, you know, like find someone to pay me to cut my hair.
Yes.
Like, I'll do it. So another thing I had to add was like, I wasn't allowed to cut my hair down there unless it was for that Peniche family. So
Oh, okay.
like that's what I mean. Like where Mexico's serious. Nothing's done on a phone call. Everything's contracted. Like when you hear of a guy losing his mask, his hair, like we're talking like $100,000. Like that's how much that guy's making. You know, like to
Hmm.
lose his mask because his potentially his career is over. So
Yeah.
you have to have contracts for that. It's not like someone's going to tell you, okay, come work for me. You're going to lose the match. We're going to shave your head in the ring, and then we're going to give you a big bag of money. Cool? Like
Hmm.
no, because what if there's no big bag of money? You know, like
Yeah.
so everything's contracted. So I called him and I'm like, find someone if you don't have shows or find someone that's gonna pay me to cut my hair. So then there was a tour I did in Central America. So I ended up cutting my hair and I forget the town, but it was like somewhere in Colombia.
Wow.
So I got paid. It wasn't 100 grand. I got like 7 grand, but hey, why not? You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like,
shit. Damn.
yeah, but if I cut my hair like a year after I did that soap opera in Mexico, I wouldn't be
Oh,
surprised
yeah.
if I got like 15, 20. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, I don't know. Because I talked to guys that were getting their heads shaved every year and they were like, oh, 20 grand, 15 grand, 10 grand, 30 grand. Like,
Damn.
yeah. But you're also risking your career being over by doing that because in the Mexican, like lucha libre culture, it's almost like you're losing all your superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a big thing.
Do you ever, and was that the absolute last time? The last time you
Yeah,
stepped in a ring?
I left everything in the hotel,
What do you mean?
like my gear and stuff. I just left it there.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, fuck it, I'm done. Like I was just like, it's over. Like, and it wasn't like I hated the business or nothing. It was just like, I don't know. For me, it was just more of like a mental grind where it's just like, I'm young. I'm like, I have injuries, but I'm not like incapable. And then I'm like, I'm over it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was just like, like while I was on tour, there was so many dramatics happening that weren't from the names. Okay. Like there weren't from the names. There was so much dramatics going on that like I had no interest. And like actually Highlander Robbie, who like, for him, I get it. He went to WWE. He didn't play politics. He just, like did his thing. And then like he understood that if he played politics, he probably would still have a job there. Right. So for him, it's like, I'm not speaking for him, but I'm pretty sure this is accurate. Like kind of demonstrated it where it's like, well, fuck it. If I'm going to get another chance in the business, I'm playing politics. So like he said to me one time, because there was like a whole bunch of shit going down. And then he's like, he's like, you don't care, do you? And I'm like, no, I don't give a shit. Like I don't put myself in these positions to care. Like I'll tell you straight, these tours at the time were so big that all these so-called name guys that like not name guys, like the legends, like these, top Ontario stars,
Hmm.
I was getting shown emails from the boss, these guys willing to work those tours for free, like just to get on them.
Hmm.
And like, I guess like I was pretty much like maybe the only guy that like worked for Nick Nitro like 12 or 13 years before that was still around. So he
Hmm.
called me and he's like, who are the Ontario guys I should book on the show? And then like I'm like, okay, like use this guy. I think this guy's good. Like this guy's a nice guy. Like I don't know. Like I'm not picking favorites. Just this is who I think. Like
Yeah.
and like one guy I really pulled for. Like he doesn't know this, but like I'm a huge fan of too. Is Justin Sane?
Yes.
Yeah, like I would like pull for him, like I'm like, book this guy, and then they're like, who trained him? Like, I don't fucking know. I'm like, but he's a really nice guy. He's athletic. Like, even at the time when he first started, like he had a body. You know what I mean? Like he's a good looking guy, and I'm like there's a spot for him, you know. And then like I don't know. I guess he wasn't politically connected enough, you know. Like, but and then for me, like having a relationship with Nick Nitro, I think another reason why I was getting booked on the show was like I already knew half the legends that the guy was booking. Like I was cool with them. I'll give you an example. Like I was friends with Nash, but then like X-Pac, I had run into in Mexico. You know, then Nash put me over to him, said like, you know, he's a friend. It's not just wrestling, you know, like, and then like, so he was automatically nice to me. So like they liked me. And then like Billy Gunn I had a relationship with. Steiner liked me because while everyone was out getting drunk and doing whatever they were doing, I would be looking for food and he would happen to be looking for food or a gym. You know what I mean? And like, we just got along, and it was like, we'd have conversations that were outside of wrestling. And then, you know, like, and we'd always run into each other. Like, I remember I did a show like via Mexico, like in San Antonio, and he happened to be booked on it. And then it's like, I'm kind of seeing you everywhere. So I'm nowhere close to their level, but they understood that I wasn't dramatic. Maybe that was why they liked me, you know, like, or maybe I'm a salty prick like they are and they can smell that. Like, I don't know. Like, you know, like, but for whatever reason,
I was gonna say that maybe you balance the friendship out, but then you said salty prick. So
no, like I honestly don't believe I was ever like mean to anyone in the business. And like sometimes I get overexcited and say something, and like sometimes you get things planted in your head, like and then like just come out like I said about the squared circle thing. It was like I don't know 100% fact that their school is built on the fact that he went on a 2-week vacation. But when enough people tell you that, you just assume to believe it. You know, like so in passing, I might say, "Oh, that guy's a jabroni." You know, like, but you know, like I don't know. I'm sure if I sat down and like talked to the guy about the weather, he's a great guy. Like I don't know. Like I don't care really. Like I don't care what he thinks of me. And like it's wrestling. It's like everyone's gonna have something to say about you. Like I'll give you another example. Like a little bit of my not regret, misfortune in Ontario. I got hyped up to work 2 people in Ontario when I was here. So one of them is like Pepper Parks. I'm like, I'm going to work with Pepper Parks. Like, I'm going to put effort in. I'm going to, like, you know. And then another one was like a guy, I forget his real name, but JT Playa.
Yep.
You know who that is?
Yep.
Those 2 guys I wanted to work with. I couldn't work with those guys. So I was booked to work with those guys 2 times. I'm all excited, like going there. Like, I don't know. Like, are you still involved in wrestling or are you finished?
I wouldn't say I'm finished, but I'm not actively involved right now.
Okay. So for me, at least, there was a point where it was like going to shows was something to do. Like, it wasn't like, you know, like it was like, okay, I'm using the ring and blah, blah, blah. But it was just like, okay, you're kind of robotic when you're wrestling because especially before you're used to working 5 days a week. Now all of a sudden you're doing it just on the weekends. Like you're going. When I knew I was going to work those 2 guys, I was like excited. Like I was like, okay, because JT Player would like message me and say like, oh, I got all these ideas. And it was like hard not to get hyped up because I know he's not like a mark and going to give me a script, you know, like, so I'm like, okay, great. And then Pepper, great. And then I couldn't work both of them because of one issue. So one issue happened 2 times and it was like nothing to do with me, not like no bad talk about the people involved, but it was all like this bullshit romance stuff. And I remember like Johnny Devine was like the booker once, and he's like, Rico, you got to do me a favor. And I'm like, what? He's like, you got to work with this guy because I'm scared that these guys are going to like shoot on each other in the ring. And I told him straight, I'm like, Johnny, I could give a fuck if they stabbed each other to death. I'm like, it's not like that's not what I'm here for. Like, I'm already like, you know, like I don't complain about money because there's none. Like, I don't, you know, like I'm excited to work with this fucking guy. And now I can't work with him because there's a romance situation, you know, like this bullshit. Like, you know, like, and I was just like, I might as well just go fucking home right now, you know, like, and I remember like talking to one half of the people involved in this and shitting on them, saying like, you're a fucking idiot, and like called them every fucking name in the book, like, just like, what the fuck, like, this is fucking dumb, Like, this is fucking supposed to be like a job for you. Like, like, what are you doing? Like, there's no, like, everyone give me shit and call me lazy, but like, you're so serious that your romantic problems are affecting the card, like, get the fuck out of here. Like, and then to go work Pepper, I was even hotter because when I went to work Pepper, that was like a 3-hour drive.
Oh,
so like,
man.
I get there and I see Pepper and he's like, oh man, I was looking forward to working with you tonight. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, he's like, they'll tell you when you go upstairs. And I'm like, go upstairs. And it's like, yeah, sorry, we had to switch like this and that. And I'm like, but why? And then they're like, some romantic shit. And I'm like, what the fuck's like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Like, that's why you're failures at fucking wrestling. You never made a fucking dime because of like dumb shit like this, like, and I'm like, where the fuck am I? Because all I'm thinking is like, if this was like somewhere in Mexico, there would be a gun pulled out. There would be like people getting stabbed, maybe a beheading. Like, it wouldn't happen because like, this is people's like livelihood. It's like, even if you think like WWE, WWF, WCW, like, you always hear like rumors, this guy's fucking this girl and this girl's wife. And like, like, and like, they don't change WrestleMania because of that. Not to say like this is WrestleMania, but it's like even shittier than a house show. Like, this is like 17 people watching. Who cares? If they have a romantic problem, how the fuck does that affect me? Like, I just want to fucking wrestle Pepper and I want to wrestle JT Play. Like, that's it. That's all I want. No, but like, that's when, like, for me, it was like, that was really like for me when it was like, I can't do this. Like, I need to stay away from this as far as possible, like, and that was it. Like, so I don't know. It's kind of funny how it's like where it started kind of ended it for me. Cause I don't know, it's just too much bullshit. Like, yeah. I don't know. I'm sure it's like that now. Like, when I talk to Josh, he doesn't say much, but like, he just says things are different. I'm assuming now, due to like technology and the internet and streaming, it would make things a lot better because like, I think it would have been pretty cool. Like, promoters or bookers have hard-ons for like these storylines where it's like, yeah, I'm not going to be back here for 2 months. Like, either are you. No one's going to remember what happened. People just want to pay $10 and watch people get beat up. That's it. Like, like, entertain them, like, have a bad guy, have a good guy. Now it's like, if we had like streaming back then, these storylines to make promoters happy would have made more sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't you think?
I think so. It's hilarious that you kept calling it romance.
Well, it was like, this guy's dating this girl and then this girl left him for this guy. And it's like, but what the fuck does that have to do with me? Like, I don't know, because like, maybe in my whole wrestling career, like, not that it was like, spectacular or whatever, but like, nowhere I'd have ever been was there ever, like, have I ever heard that before? And like, I've never had a conversation with like a legend that I may like look up to. Like, I used to talk to Sags a lot. Like, actually every Christmas I still talk to Sags. I think he's an excellent guy. I think I learned a lot about the Nasty Boys, which I didn't know. They started really young as well. And then like, I think he respected me because he looked at like what I did in my career as like territorial. Like, oh, you went to this territory. And then it's like, oh, well, Mexico has a dozen territories on its own. Like, you got Monterrey, you got the North, you got the East, you got the South, you got the Midwest, you got the West. So it's like, when we talk about that, is like, okay, I can understand how it is to be on the road. It's not glamorous. It's not whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. So like talking to him, and then it's just like, man, it's like, then like you get a little hyped about something, and then it's like, like these dramatics are what kind of ruin it. And it's just like, and it's not like an insult on the people involved. It's just like, come on, like, we're just wrestling here, like, mm-hmm. I don't know. At the end of the day, it's like, I know I'm a little tainted and maybe I sound bitter, but I try not to be, like, do I sound bitter?
I don't think you do. I think you just...
I'm honest.
You're honest. And that's something that, well, it's something that not a lot of people are used to. Like,
well, they're scared.
Especially like, in this business.
Yeah. Like, even for me, like, I remember like, I used to do that O show like often. And like, it's like kind of bite your tongue if you say something. Cause it's like, you don't want to piss off the wrong guy. And like, I don't know, like you just saw it in the change rooms, like the people that would get babied or like, they put on this pedestal and it's just like I think it was like Derek Wild. I think like while I was back in Ontario for 2 years, he had like 4 retirement matches. It's like there's fucking 40 people here. Like who gives a shit? Like no, but I don't mean that as an insult to him, but it's like, okay, like now everything has to shut down for you. It's like if you're
Yeah.
doing a gimmick like to draw, like that's cool. But it's like, and like even like that was part of the crew. Like he was always nice to my face, but that was part of the crew that like didn't want me around like when I first started wrestling. So it's kind of like, all right, like, like I don't know. It's like whatever. Like I never worked the guy. Like he didn't want to work with me because I was just like, who am I going to work with? Keep me motivated. And I always worked the same guys. I must have worked RJ like 150 times. And like he got it. Maybe because we rode together. He called every single match. I didn't do shit. I was just there for him. Like I remember people giving me shit saying like, oh, you shouldn't be jobbing for RJ. And I'm like, who cares? Like I'm going to be done by the time he starts to like take off, if he decides to take off. Like I remember working Josh one time and I was so mad because went to the ring. I was supposed to be the face. He's the heel. They completely like shit on me and they were cheering for him. And I'm like, take it. And he didn't take it, which now obviously would be a different story. But like in my eyes, it's like it all comes from confidence. And it's like, a lot of these guys are like getting their confidence sucked away from them instead of instilled in them. You know what I mean? Like, because it's always that kind of like big brother bully kind of attitude that's going on in the change rooms where it's like, I don't know if it's the same now, but I'm sure if they change that, there'd be a lot better stars out there,
Yeah. Do you ever think about wrestling again? Like, do you just think
No,
about, no?
nah. The way I look at things in life is like, if I'm not progressing, I'm regressing. So it's like, I kind of like knew what was next for me. Like, I kind of wanted to get educated and stuff like that. And then like, I can't work for anybody. Like I'm too fucked up from wrestling. Like I can't go get a job. Like I can't. Like I just figure I just do everything on my own. And then like fate is like a big thing too. Okay, so back in 2005, I got a heads up that there was these units in like an industrial area in Markham. They're like they were super cheap because the area was dead. But like they were saying like, oh, in 15 years they're gonna build like a whole like downtown core like in this area. So it was like, so I bought some units like from the money I was making wrestling, and it was really cheap and they were easy to rent. So it was like kind of harmless investment. So so what happened was I had them rent it, and then 3 weeks, no, not 3 weeks, about 6 weeks before I was going to get my haircut and like my final tour, I got a phone call from a lady who was leasing from me, and she's like, I want out of the lease because I want to retire. Like, can we work something out? And I'm like, yeah, like we'll get together, we'll figure it out. So I walked in my unit and I'm like, I don't even remember what it looked like. And I'm like, I could build a gym in here. Like, like, so I literally like was like, yeah, when do you want to get out? And she's like, I want to be out December 1st. I'm like, done. So we worked something out. She left. And then I think it was like October like 28th or something. I got my hair cut in the ring. And then December 3rd, I was running a personal training business.
Wow.
Yeah. Like no like timeouts. Like I literally built a gym in 3 weeks. And like, I just like use like contacts, like, cause at the time, like even now I work with a lot of kids. Like my whole theory, like people ask me like, I won't take like people who just want to look better, like for one-on-one training, like what I do. So like, I want it to be like beneficial. Like I want to feel like kind of when I go home at the end of the day, like I help society. So like anyone can go to a gym and lift weights and look decent, right? So working with a lot of kids, especially the young athletes, because I felt like I was like thrown into the fire at a young age. I could probably like teach them a little bit of the mental side. So I was working with kids, and then and then like I take some adults here and there, and then like I just wanted to continue education. So like I did a nutritionist course, then I was like, this isn't enough. So I went back to school. I did nutritional science, like nutritional sciences. So like I did
Wow.
that, and then like exercise science. Like no, but it wasn't like a big thing for me. Like I was the kind of nerd that would like steal biology books like in high school because I realized someone taught me that working out and eating is like biology, you know? Like so
Hmm.
like I was like always like interested in learning that stuff. So even when I was on the road, there's nothing to do when you're on the road. Like there's only so much friends and will and grace. And like I said, like it's Mexico, it's not Toronto. Like it's like kind of you got to watch yourself. So like I went through my party phase like a little bit, but it was like once you're actually on the road and doing it for a living, it's like you need your rest, and like it's not party 24/7. Like because
Hmm.
your travel isn't like always elegant. Like there's a lot of bus rides and stuff. So
Hmm.
I would just like buy books and like just like read like about like like nutrition or like working out and stuff like that. And then so it kind of prepared me. Like it was kind of easy transition. So like
Yeah.
going to school was more of a overwhelming experience because I'd never gone. Like
Hmm.
if you like if you're in your like late teens, early 20s, and you have like a university experience, like not a big deal to go back. For me, it was like
Hmm.
almost overwhelming. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So like I did that, and then I work with a lot of sick people, and like majority of my clients, to be honest, like my nutrition clients and like our mental health.
Hmm.
Like
Oh.
I took that path. Like um I don't know, like it's an issue. Like even for myself, like I have like PTSD. So I have PTSD because of like obviously like my time in Mexico and stuff. And it's like it was like a really difficult transition to come back. Like when I first started personal training, I'm like, oh, okay. Like I have the kids, but then I'm like, if I have some adults, I'm like, I'm gonna have like normal adults. Like I thought to myself, like, I'm gonna have normal citizens, like
Hmm.
people who have jobs 9 to 5 and they go home and feed their cat and their kids and they go to bed, like, and then I'm like working and I'm like, these fucking regular folks are way more fucked up than I am, like, because it was like, I was like completely weird to me, like, it was just like hearing like, office politics is like, oh, this is like wrestling, but I can't say anything because then I'm going to expose myself for, being in a fucked up industry, right? Like, so you're
Yeah.
trying to like make yourself be normal, but you're like, nobody's normal. And then it was like going to school is like, oh, okay, like, like pick a path. And it was like doing the diets for like people who want to lose weight or gain weight are kind of like easy. Like not easy,
Hmm.
but I mean like it's like, okay, I got that. And then it's like I found this fascination with like the mental illness side because you'd be shocked to know how much diet like affects it. Like
Really?
oh yeah, like big time. Like I could talk for 4 hours just about like how like using vegetable oil will fuck you up or like like and you got to remember like I took a nutritionist course, so I learned like I call it the tree hugger side, and
Hmm.
then like and then I did like nutritional like sciences, so like the dietitian side. So I have experience on both sides, so like I kind of like combo them because I don't believe one side works better than the other. But like
Hmm.
you'd be shocked. Like it was fascinating for me like to learn all this stuff, and then it was like I started to make some changes in my diet from what I learned, and I was like, okay, because I was getting anxiety and stuff when it was weird. I lived in Mexico City, didn't get anxiety a day. And then it's like I'm in like the suburbs of Toronto and I'm getting anxiety driving, and it's like, why? It's all from like not wrestling life. I'm not blaming wrestling, but it's like that's where it stemmed from, like a lot of those experiences catch up to you.
Hmm.
So it was a very difficult transition for me. So yeah, so like having my business is helpful, and then like I have like a online semi-online business where it's like I don't physically have to see a lot of my nutrition clients. So yeah, so basically that's what wrestling got for me. That's why I try not to shit on it too much because I wouldn't have this if I didn't wrestle.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
you've been coaching my husband for years so that people just understand just how legit you are. Like I know you helped him like years ago as well. Because I remember when we were back in our other house. But
Yeah.
talking about more recent,
Yeah.
one day he'll be like, "Oh, I lost this much." Like,
Mm,
and I'll be like, "Wow, that's amazing." And he's like, "Oh," he just shrugged his shoulders like, "Oh, just
yeah.
put my trust in Rico, you know?" And
Yeah.
it's been amazing. And I guess one thing that I really want to point out is
Mm.
nothing happens quickly. Like,
No, nothing
I mean,
safe.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Just watching him, like, how long has it been now? Like over a year since you've been coaching him
No,
through, right?
no. So like, okay, so like even from when I met those guys wrestling, it's like because I was always bigger, they were always like ask questions. So I always like kind of just give them like pointers and like like send them like try this workout or like like eat this, avoid
Mhm.
this, and then like after like when I actually like got educated and stuff, Josh reached out to me, no, not even a year ago. And I just told him, I said, like, if you want to do this, I said, like, you have kids, you have a wife. I said, like, don't kill yourself. Because what I see a lot is like, I have a lot of bodybuilding rejects. So what I mean by that is people who like fried their systems to look a certain way, they pay
Mhm.
for it later in life. So I said, like, let's play the long game here. Like you'll get the results. It just won't come as fast, but you'll also not lose them.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like more of a lifestyle.
Mhm.
I don't have anything to promote my business, but like, I like to call myself like lifestyle management opposed to a trainer or like a nutritionist. Cause it's basically like, tell me your life, tell me what you enjoy to eat. I'll make it fit around there. And obviously, there's going to be sacrifices. And then, like, even for myself, like dealing with injuries. So I think Josh reached out to me last August. So it hasn't even been a year. And
Oh,
then,
really?
yeah. And then I told him, like, because before that we talk here and there because I always would message like some of the guys I like and just say like, how's life going, like how's the wrestling thing, how's this, and then yeah, and then like I'd give him a pointer here and there, like if I'd see a video of him doing something stupid I would say it,
Mhm.
like, and then because they understand it's coming from a good place. So and then yeah, and then last August he reached out to me and he's just like, I really need your help and this is a situation and whatever. And I was like, okay. Like, and then, like that's why too I put like responsibility on a lot of the people I work with for two reasons. One, accountability is okay, well, I'm gonna pick a day. I want your weight and waist measurements sent to me every day. Or not every day, like every week on this day. And
Mhm.
then like if I have to make adjustments, I make them. If not, and then like I ask like how you feeling, how's everything? Like, are you moody? Are you this? Are you that? Because like everything's connected. It's not just like the way you look.
Mhm.
Like just the like quick example is like I had a girl that I trained for like 4 years. So when she came in here, just looking at her, you're like, whatever you're doing is working. Like that's my mentality was like, you don't need me. And then she's like, I need you. And she showed me her blood work. And then I'm like, this girl, because she was like only in her late 20s, had the cholesterol of like a 60-year-old Italian guy that's eaten pork and, like pizza all his life. And it's like you can't judge a book by the outside, so the inside just
Mhm.
is important. So
Mhm.
that's the whole thing. It's like you want to look great, but you don't want to look great and sacrifice like you're moody all the time, you can't sleep, like your nervous system is taking a beating. So I kind of look at like the overall package. So I take like all facets of my education and implement it when I'm working with someone. And it obviously helps when you have a relationship with them. Like
Yeah.
I kind of know Josh and I know like his life story and I know like everything and I know like what he wants. So that makes it a little easier.
He always says just how, because I asked him, like, how long have you known Rico?
Mm.
And he's always said that you were always a generous guy. Like, you had no problem, giving out advice and just basically like what you said, just shooting a message and just making sure that, you know, that he's okay. And
Yeah, that's like I guess like just my upbringing, but at the same time too, it's also um like I wouldn't have got the opportunities if I didn't get for two reasons, and I only figured out one like a couple years ago. One was like balls, like I had the balls to just go. Like there's no nicer word to say than that,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
and then like the second one was like the people that helped me, like Del Rio walking me in like to the office, you know, like Sabu putting me over to these guys, Damien and Mr. Aguila and Halloween saying, you know, you're fucking here from Canada. You know what I mean? Like someone should give you a chance, you know, like, and I think it was just like, you know, like these are guys that are like maybe not top guys to the world, but they're top guys where they're from. You know what I mean? And then like if you look at like the late 90s, early 2000s, like they've wrestled all over the world. Like they would tell WWF, no thanks. You know, like, so it's like these guys are being that nice to me. It's like the least I can do is like pass it on. And at the time when I came back from Ontario, I tell the guys like, get out of here. You know, like you can wrestle your friends every week. It's not going to do anything for you. So I was just trying to be as transparent as I can and not fall into any clicks, even though that sometimes can get hard to do.
Yeah.
But my whole sole purpose, which it didn't work out, but the whole thing in my mind, what I told myself was, if I can go and help these like younger batch of guys that are coming through, I will. Like, there's one thing I feel bad about, and I shouldn't feel bad about this, but like, you know, Ethan Page. So the first time I ever worked Ethan Page was in like a humid, like it was so fucking humid, and the ring was the shits, and they had like a canvas, like it was like, and it was wet because of all the humidity.
Yeah.
So I told him straight, I ain't doing shit with you because I'm not breaking my ankle. So we're going to keep this really simple. And then in my mind, I'm like, I owe him, you know, because I didn't give him anything like in that match. And then the next time I worked with him, they were like, oh, like, okay, you're going over. I'm like, no, I'll just put the guy over. And then it was like Robbie, the Highlander, was the booker. And I'm like, I like Robbie, so I don't want to argue with him. So I was just like, I'll do whatever you want. Like, you know, like that's just kind of the way I felt. Because like, if I'm not helping the new crop of people, I'm completely useless. It's like I said, you got a guy like who's 20 years wrestling. Like, I don't know this for a fact, but just kind of like the odd thing I hear. Like, you look at Tyson's been wrestling for over 20 years. And like, he's good at what he does or whatever. But the fuck, you taking spots away from young guys? You know what I mean? Like, let them have it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're done. You know, like if no one signed you by now, they're not. So it's like, teach, give them opportunity. And I'm not saying Tyson takes away opportunities, but it's like, if it's like you hear like, oh, here's a show. And then it's like, okay, same guys that used to wrestle back then. It's like, no, don't come out of retirement. Don't come like do it. Like, you know, let the young guys have it because they're never going to learn. And that was another thing where it was like not motivational for me to wrestle. I'd rather have, I'm not saying because your husband, like I'd rather Josh take my spot than me do it. Like, what am I going to get out of it?
See, we need more people like you.
Yeah, I guess. Like, I don't know. Like, but that's also the way I was taught. Like, so, you know, like when you break it down, like sometimes when I think about it, and I had this conversation with Josh, I'm like, if people were like taught that, like to not be so selfish when it comes to it, I think it'd be like smoother. Not to say wrestling's bad, because I don't even know. The newest wrestling I saw was like 4 years ago, and I went to Santino's gym, and then like, cause he had a show, and I went there and I watched it, and then like Josh was on that show, and I saw like that what was going on, and it was like Cody Deaner was on the show, and I was like, I don't know, I think he's like an awesome showman. I don't know. To me, he reminds me of Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Like, to me, Hacksaw Jim Duggan should be on every single show of wrestling, because I don't care how cool like the wrestlers are on the show. No one gets a pop like him. And if he doesn't get the pop, he makes himself get the pop. Like, you know, and I find Cody like the same way. So like a guy like Cody's been wrestling so long, but he has a place on the show. Like when you have a guy that's been wrestling for 20 something years, but he's doing the same match, or he looks like he works at Walmart. Like, you know, like you, what are you there for? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are you, like, other than maybe to show your neighbors and your friends and your kids that you're a wrestler, like, okay, do one match and fuck off. You know, like that's my whole thing, where it's like, there's not a lot of promotions. There's $0, but people need a place to learn. And then that's where I think like a lot of the political stuff comes in. And like, I'm not knocking when I use like names of people. Like, it's just a matter of like the reality. It's like, if you were wrestling before I was, and I've been done. So you figure from 99, we're in 2021. That's 22 years. If you've been around for more than 22 years and you're still taking a spot from a younger guy, I don't know, like maybe stay home half the amount of bookings you can have and get other people bookings. Like that's what I was saying about like that Justin Sane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, like I don't really know him. Like I just like when I know him from when I'd see him, and it's like, why aren't I not seeing you getting more opportunity? Unless you don't want it, you know, like why? Like you have the athleticism, you have the look, you have everything. And it's like, I don't know if it's politics or whatever the case is, but I mean, like if he wants to wrestle, he should be able to pick and choose where he goes to work. Like I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
for the big companies, because I don't know if he's like that, like marketable or that good, but like as an independent, it's like, why aren't you working? Like even like some of my favorites were like, I told you Kingdom was like my favorite, but he's old, so he could stay his fucking old ass home. But like like Justin Sane, like I'm not gonna say Josh or like Paige because they're doing their thing, like they're on TV and stuff. But I remember like the guy, the hacker, like
Mm-hmm.
Kurt,
Yep.
like I'm a big fan of his. Like I remember I used to do shows with him for these guys called the Chant Monkeys, and those were like
Mm-hmm.
some of the funnest shows that I did because there was like no ego around there, you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
then there's like there's that Italian guy like Bruno, whatever. Like I liked him, you know. Like I was like really fans of these guys, so it's like I hope that they're getting opportunity and they're not, like they don't have to like not do a show because someone else is taking their spot, like,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like friends of mine, like Asylum, like he's a friend of mine. I haven't talked to him in years, but like he was cool. And like I think he had a great brain for the business, like in the sense of like he knew what to do in the match. Like he was better than me. He would tell me what to do and it was great. But like, even him, like you're old, like, like no one signed you yet. So it's like you don't need to be on every show, like kind of stay at home. But I kind of don't have the right to say that. And I'm not shitting on them, but I just think because if there's limited places to work, you should step aside and give the opportunity because your time has passed.
I get
Does
that.
that does
I
that
get
make
that.
sense? Or like am I a dick for saying that?
No, it does make sense. I
Because
think, but I think,
that's another reason why I didn't want to, like I would feel guilty about taking a booking. Like the tour was a whole different story. So I'm like, hey, I never seen Eastern Canada. Let me go do it. Like, but I'm like, I don't need to work these shows in Oshawa because me being on the show means someone else is staying home and my heart isn't in it and I don't care. And I already had my chance,
Mhm.
like, so it's like move on or book my own show for
the only
7 people,
thing the only
like,
thing I'd say is if they love the business so much, like if they love performing so much that even if they did like just one independent show, like what would you say to that? Would you
no,
tell
like
them?
I'm not saying don't wrestle because who am I to tell anyone not to do something they love? My whole point is like if you're on like if there's let's say I don't know, I'm going to throw a number. There's 10 shows in Ontario a month, and you're on 6 of them. You don't need to be on 6.
Oh,
Like you could be
yes,
on
no.
you could be on 4 because
Mhm.
like those other 2, there might be a guy I never even heard of before because it doesn't matter because I don't know wrestling who you're taking those 2 shows away from. But I'm thinking in my own shoes is like back in the day, it was like if I could get 2 shows a month, like that's huge.
Mhm.
Like that's like I was lucky to get one a month. Maybe you get one every 6 weeks. So it's like you can give them the 2 and you can still have your 4, or maybe you have your 3, or maybe you teach, like
Mhm.
maybe you go there, you get your same payday, but like they throw you in a triple threat or like in a tag match, or you're just the guy who sits in the back and like, like actually like agents these guys. Cause let's face it, majority of these indie shows is like the guys who are telling you what to do have never wrestled. Like I remember one thing I did at the beginning a lot, and it confused people, was I would walk around because I didn't know a lot of guys and say
Mhm.
like, "Hey, what's your finish?" And like they're like, "But we're not working together." I said, "Yeah, no, I just want to know your finish because I don't want to use it."
Mhm.
Like, and it was just like they were confused. Like, and it's like, yeah, because there's no one there to teach you that stuff. So like, if you have a guy who's like I don't know, I'll use the examples, an Asylum, Tyson, Derek Wild, or whoever like has been around that long. If they're like, okay, I need to know what you guys plan on doing because this guy's finish is this. You can't do it in the middle of the match or at the beginning of the match and you kick out. Like like everyone knows it's a work, but you still want to entertain people. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like you don't want to look stupid either, because it's like someone who's reluctant to go to a show goes and sees, I don't know, like I don't know, moonsault is the guy's finish in the fourth match. But in the first two matches, they did moonsaults to start off the show and the people kicked out. The guy's gonna probably like say, well, like there's no dramatics here. Like there's no build up, right? Like everyone's job is to build up to the main event, right? So like who's there to teach these people that? I'll be honest, like no one will probably want to listen to me, and I could give a shit to do it. But like the people that have the passion to like do it, it's like there's room for you. Like, I don't know, don't you just think it's like make it better for like I think like this way. It's like, you know, like leave the world better for the kids. So it's like in wrestling, it's like, wow, no one was around doing that stuff for us. I love the business so much. Why don't I be around to do it for them? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're talking like doing all these shows, like 6, 7 shows, then yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah.
But
because you're not doing it for a living.
Yeah, no. You would only be doing it like, say, if I was getting back into it, I would be doing it simply because I love, you know, I just love wrestling.
Yeah, but like, I mean, okay, so it's like a hobby, which is fine. But like, what I mean is like, if you knew that there was like people would drive, and like now's different than before. Like now it's like a little more normal. It's not like there's one girls match every like 2 months.
Yeah.
You know, like, so like, let's say for instance, like if you know, like, okay, you're going to do a match a month and like, that's it. And you're not going to take time away from like the young, hungry girl that like wants to do this as a career. Like, who cares? No problem. But I mean, if you're starting to be like, oh, you know, I can do this every week. And then like, you know, like majority of the time people aren't thinking, who am I taking the spot away from? Right. So it's like, you know, you got to like, okay, are you going to do this? Or you're not going to do it. If you're going to do it, you do it. If not, you let people know like, hey, listen, I'm just looking for like a show a month. Like, I don't see anything wrong with that, you know, like, but if this was like, I don't know, when I was wrestling in Ontario and there was rarely any girls matches, I would say like, maybe you should just either pick you're in or you're out, because, you know, there was a lot of ignorance back then when it came to women. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't a lot of like women wrestling. Like the only ones I remember, when this is okay, before I left, like to go to Mexico, I remember there was a girl named 21st Century Fox.
Yeah. Yep.
Her. That was the only girl, like, and then whoever she'd work with, it was just them. Like, that's all I would see in Ontario, right? I'm talking just Ontario. But then when I like came back second time, there was like Dania, Cherry Bomb, Jen Blake, I don't know, like a couple other girls, but like there was the guy in Oshawa, he would actually have just like a women's tournament and like bring in girls from like Quebec and stuff. So it was like, it was a little bit more like open-minded, where it's like, you know, like, so that's what I mean too. It's like picking your spots. Because it's, I don't know, is this still cliquish from the guys you talk to?
I a teeny bit. I think it's changing. I think after this pandemic, I think some promotions may be done, and I think the click will be over.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, because they're basically getting washed out because the pandemic basically just fucked them. Yeah. Like, so, yeah. No, I get that, but that's not like, yeah, but that's kind of like, that's kind of a bad thing, because like, if there was no pandemic, then it'd still be cliquish, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like, see, like even like Josh told me, he's like, oh, you hung around like this guy and this guy and this guy. I was like, I did. I'm like, I know I rode with this guy, but it was just like, that I really hang around anybody. Like, I always found like I was more comfortable being around the up and coming guys, because to me, they were still raw. You know, like I just asked them like, who trained you? And then it's like, okay, this person. Like, okay. I don't know. I think even it got to a point where like everyone just became a wrestling teacher. So I don't know. Like, I don't know what they're learning. Like, you can learn moves and you can learn bumps, but like, who's actually teaching you like the business? You know,
Yeah.
like, but like I said, like, hey, before I went to my coach's school, like maybe about like 6 months before, I went
Mm.
to Sully's gym because there was an old school guy who like really old school guy who I
Mm-hmm.
knew like outside of wrestling, who was like really good friends with Sweet Daddy Siki. And then I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, like Edge and those guys came from that gym. So I went one night just to see it. And then like I went there and like I watched like 20 minutes of a class,
Mm-hmm.
like with Ron Hutchinson and stuff. And then I'm like, oh, okay, you know, like I didn't get the same vibe because there's just a bunch of guys in there. Like, I'm not saying it
Mm-hmm.
was bad. I'm just saying like when I went to like the gym that I went to, it was like serious. Like it was like, okay, like I'm gonna learn here. Like I'm not here to make
Mm-hmm.
friends. So I think like the way you're taught makes a big difference too. It's like I
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, like not to shit on people, but like, you know, no one's always taught like the business side of things. They're just taught the moves because the coach got to pay his bills, so he just wants those monthly fees. You know, like where it's like my coach looked at me and was like, "You really want to be a wrestler?" It's like, "Yeah, this is how much it costs. You're gonna have half of it on Tuesday, and you're gonna have the other half a month from Tuesday. If you really want to be a wrestler, you're gonna figure out how to get that money." And like that's how he left it with me. You know what I mean? Like so, it was like kind of cold. Like I wasn't babied, obviously. If you really want to do this, like you're gonna figure out how to get that money. You know, and that's kind of like the way it was like being taught was like, you know, no one's gonna call you at home. You got to go find your opportunity. You know, and like I look at like the guys who came from my gym, like even before me, it was an all or nothing thing. Like Al Barone made a living off wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who played Jason the Legend made a living off wrestling. Santino Morella living off wrestling. George Terzis living off wrestling and like semi shoot fighting. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like it wasn't like we did this once in a while, which is nothing wrong with. It's just like I wasn't brought into the business like that. Like that's why like maybe my journey sounds a little like weird, but like or like not typical. And it was just because of the non-typical gym I came from.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great story.
Well, it's my life, you know, like
Yeah.
that's what like, yeah, that's basically what it is. And, you know, I'm not like, I see like a lot of interviews with guys, like everyone's praising themselves. It's like, I fucked up just as much as I did well. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, but I guess at the end of it, it's just one of those things was like, okay, you know, like when I bought those units, the way I looked at it is like, if I go completely broke the rest of my life, at least I own the units. I can live in one and no one can kick me out because I own it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
so, and thank you to wrestling. Like, that was my attitude. The other part of it's just like, if I can have a reputation as being like a nice human being, like that's good enough for me. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like, but like I also know like I have a reputation to some as like lazy guy because they just see like me post career, but they have no clue what I did before I turned into the lazy guy, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, so that's the whole thing where it's like, you kind of don't judge, you know what I mean? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
kind of got to like know the whole story. But unfortunately, like some of the bitterness is like due to like having no success, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you see a lot of that too. But like I'm totally cool with the weekend warriors. I don't think they kill the business. I just think that like if everyone is a little bit less selfish, we'd probably see the development of bigger stars.
That's true.
Because I tried so hard. Like I'm not just saying this. Like I truly tried hard to get like Justin Sane booked more. And like
Mm-hmm.
it just never happened. And I'm like, if this guy worked like just 2 or 3, you know, more shows a month from 10 years ago, like maybe we'd be seeing him on TV every week. Am I wrong though? Like,
No, you're not wrong. Like he's still wrestling.
oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I
I
guess
mean,
like
not
this
during the
last year, no.
pandemic, but he
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess this last year, nobody's wrestling. Like I remember too, when I was wrestling before, everyone was trying to get to like Border City Wrestling. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
like the big goal, you know,
Yeah.
like it was like, yeah, he ran big shows. He had names. He drew. He understood the business. Like I don't really know Scott Demore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I had like 2 talks with him. So one thing that was really cool. Remember, I told you I did the soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
So I met Scott Demore's uncle while I was filming the soap opera.
What?
Yeah. See how like fucked up it is? Okay, so like one of the like we were doing it in like a nightclub that was in a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a 15-hour day. So like, like during the day when they didn't need me, I just go outside, like 10, like go in the pool or whatever. And there was a bunch of Canadians, and whenever I'd hear someone speak English, I would talk to them. So I was talking and this and that, and then it's like, what are you doing here? And then I like, are you part of the filming? I said, yeah. I said, like, they're filming like a show. And then he's like, oh, you're an actor? I said, no, I'm not an actor. I said, I wrestle here, but I said, I'm being an actor for today. And then he's like, you wrestle? And I said, yeah. And then he's like, my nephew wrestles. And then I said, oh, yeah. And then he's where? And he's like, Windsor. And like, who's your nephew? And then he's like, Scott. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And then like, I was like, what's your name? And then like, like it was nice, met him, the aunt, whatever. And then when I came back one time, I saw Scott. I said, hey, I met your uncle, and then like by the time I told him that, unfortunately, he had passed away or something like that.
Oh.
And then, yeah. And then another conversation I had with Scott was, so he was doing something with All Japan Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with like everyone from All Japan, like,
Yeah.
like from Masada and Osawa, like all those guys. So like, it's kind of weird because, like I said, in Ontario, I was just like the lazy guy. But then like when those young boys from All Japan came here, like they would like, so like Masada and Osawa, like those guys would tell the young boys, you're going to Canada, see if you find this guy. Like he worked with us. And then like, oh, big star. Like they would say like, he's a big star. So these guys would come and everyone's looking at me like I'm some lazy, like old guy. And then these like Japanese guys are bowing to me and like, like trying to carry my bags.
Yeah.
And like, they're like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, so that's where it's kind of weird because no one knows like the life I went through, or a lot of people, like one person asked me, and I found this funny. Like I was in Oshawa wrestling in front of 40 people. Okay. So this guy comes up to me and he says to me, like, this is one of the boys. This isn't like a fan. And he says, hey man, I got to ask a question. I said, what's up? And he's like, is there money in Mexico? And I'm like, you're wrestling at fucking Oshawa in front of 40 people, like, and you're asking me if there's money in Mexico. You know what I like the ignorance. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Like, so, and I had that ignorance before I traveled. Like, I thought it's WWF or bust. Like, you're a loser if you don't make it there. Like, that's what I thought. And then it's like, once you actually learn the business, like, there's almost zero desire to even want to go to WWF. Like, Mark Jindrak?
Not personally. Yeah, but I know who he is. Yep.
Yeah. So like that guy, I remember meeting him his first day in Mexico. And I'm like, you're going to be a fucking star here. And then he's like, you think so? I'm like, yeah. And like, Mexico's a freaky place, like you kind of like, I don't know, like I liked it, but I was young and naive. I don't think I would do the same things then. I wouldn't do what I did then now, like, so he's like kind of like timid and stuff like that, like there. And then like, he just like, and I said, like, you're going to be a big star. Trust me, you're going to be a big star. And look what he turned into, humongous star, you know? And like, even I told him, it's like, oh, you got to get yourself on the soap operas. I said, that's where the money's at. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I just want to wrestle. And then, fuck, the guy was on a soap opera too, like, so like, see what I mean? Like, it's just like, you don't know until you're there. Like, you don't really know what's going on until you get there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I want to play one game with you.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to play rapid fire.
Okay.
I'm just going to name a simple move, and the first wrestler that pops up, you just say.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. The first one is drop kick.
Randy Orton.
Nice. Super kick.
Shawn Michaels.
Choke slam.
Big Show.
DDT.
Jake the Snake Roberts.
Neck breaker.
Ravishing Rick Rude.
Oh, nice one. Moonsault.
Mr. Aguila.
And power bomb.
Psycho Sid.
Nice.
You know why I said Psycho Sid?
Why?
Because I always was terrified. Like if I ever had to work him, I'd have to take it. Because the way
Oh.
the way he would power bomb people, like I'm not saying he's unsafe, I don't know, but I'm just saying like it was so like his power bomb was so believable, like
Mhm.
punishing, like that, like it would be scared. Like if I work with Nash, I wouldn't be scared because I see the way he drops the guy, you know.
Mhm.
Like, but
Yeah.
Sid, like I don't know, it's like I know he's not hurting anybody because you don't hear about it, but like I don't know, it's just so powerful.
Mhm. You everybody that I've done a podcast with, like at least one of them, they would like need to take the time to like think about it. But you just like bang them out. So
Yeah,
you know your stuff.
the only one I had trouble with the first one with the drop kick was
Mhm.
like in a millisecond, I was crossed between Bob and Randy Orton.
Oh,
Like for the drop kick, because like
yeah.
Bob's like a bigger guy, you know, like Randy Orton looks like a guy who has a beautiful drop kick, right?
Yeah.
Like Bob Orton looks like a guy who's like, you know, got an amazing shoulder tackle, you know, like,
Mhm.
but his drop kick was like impressive. So it was a tie between those two, but because Orton's taller and he gets that height, I'll give it to him. But I also could have said like if I'm like now because now you're making my brain go, Mark Jindrak.
Mm,
No one has a better vertical leap in the wrestling business than Mark Jindrak.
damn.
Yeah.
Well, now you're doing lifestyle management for anybody who is serious about getting coaching done with like nutrition and training. Is there somewhere they can contact you?
Yeah, my Instagram. Like I keep it private because I just kind of keep it simple.
Mhm.
And I'm not entertaining. So if you want to get entertained, you're not going to get entertained off my Instagram. um but yeah, like that's just the easiest way is like contact me on there. Let me know, you know, like that you heard of me from here. Yeah, and then that's it. Like I accept you and then I can give you more information on what I do and how I do it.
Perfect. And what's your Instagram handle?
It is Rico Montana _1.
Okay, perfect. Rico, thank you so much for sharing your story with me.
Thank you.
I was completely blown away. Literally, your story, it's like you just were telling a movie and your mic drop of leaving your gear in the hotel and just saying, "See you later." Like
Yeah, that was yeah. But
blew me away.
Josh never gave you a heads up on anything. Like I just assumed that maybe he would because he knew we were talking. Like
I did ask him. I said, like, "Is there anything that I should know about Rico
mhm,
that,
yeah,
you know, like I don't want him to think I'm an idiot, but
no,
like, should I know something?" And he said, "Well, like he was a really good wrestler. Like he traveled." And that's
mhm,
all he said. I said, "Okay, perfect. I don't want to know anymore."
yeah,
And which is why I told you right off the bat, like I know nothing about you, but
yeah.
like I didn't want you to take that in like a wrong way.
Oh no, I
Um
don't at all.
but it got me, like, really excited to just know, like, your story.
Yeah, no, but no one does. Like that was the whole thing where it was like, okay, I'm coming from somewhere and I had some success, but like it means nothing in Ontario. So like I would tell people like, and it was very nice of like promoters and bookers to be like, hey, but like you're not a jabroni. And it's like, yeah, but I am a jabroni because like one, it's like I don't wrestle the style, I don't know it. And two, it's like I'm not a name. So when someone books me as a special guest, I'm not a special guest. I'm just like no different than the new guy. Because I highly doubt that like people who saw me wrestle in 2001 or two in Ontario are still coming to shows, you know, like, so like no one really knew me, you know, like, so I'm not special. Like, I'm just a
No,
guy,
but, like
you know,
but
like,
maybe that's your upbringing as well, right? Like, you're very, like, low key.
yeah.
That's what I'm getting from you, and you just I don't think you hold yourself as high as you should.
Well, okay. I'll tell you one thing right now. And I heard this from a lot of like name guys. Like I remember, you know, Ricky Banderas,
No.
you know, El Macias and like, what was the wrestling that had like, it was on TV for a while. Cross worked there. Del Rio worked there. It was like, oh man, the big guy Brian Cage was on there, and his wife was the ring
Oh, Lucha
announcer.
Underground?
Yeah, Lucha Underground. So he was
Yeah.
like he's a big guy there. So Ricky Banderas very quickly. Humongous star in Puerto Rico, like huge. Then went to Mexico, huge star. He worked AAA, but like a lot of times we'd be in the same hotels, and we made a little bit of a friendship. Like I learned a lot from him listening to him. And he said to me, he goes, one thing I see about you. And I said, what? He goes, you're not a mark for yourself. And then I was like, I'm not. Because like, so my wife's Mexican, never watched me wrestle a day in her life. Like she doesn't give a shit about wrestling, doesn't know nothing about it. But like her nephews did. So like, remember I told you there's like 10 wrestling magazines every week. Yeah. So like her nephews would like say like, hey, like he's in like these magazines. And I would say, hey, do me a favor. I'm like, buy the magazines, like I'll send you the money. And then I'm like, if in one day I want the magazines because I want to see myself, I'll ask you for them. But like even in like my facility, like the walls are bare, like everything. And people would say to me, like, with your career, why don't you have pictures of yourself? And I'm like, it's not about me. Like this place isn't about me. Like if you walk in someone's gym and they have pictures of themselves, to me, I'm like, you're a fucking mark. Like, and maybe I shouldn't be that rude, but like, it just is. Like, for me, it's like, okay, you're paying me to come here for me to do my job for you. Why do you need to look at pictures of me? If anything, I should have pictures of you up there, like, so I don't know. I just never really cared. Like I've never watched the soap opera I was on, but my parents have, what I mean? Like someone, like another long story short, people from Canada were like in Mexico, and then they realized it was me that was on the show, and they were VHSing it and sending it to my parents, like when they come back home. Like, but I don't care to like, I'll listen to like this interview to make sure I don't sound too much like an asshole. But like, I don't know. I just don't feel like it's about me. I think there's a bigger picture to things, and I'm proud of my accomplishments and all that. But I think I became more proud of what I did more recently than at the time it was happening, because I just feel like everything that I did was what you're supposed to do. And for me, like not everyone's path, but like for me. So yeah, I don't know. Like I guess I really am not that much of a mark for myself. Like,
but it's okay for other people, but it's okay for other people to mark out for you. So that's what the promoter was doing. He thought of you as someone big, right? So just take it.
Yeah, no, and I did, but like, it was just one of those things where it's like, I'm not here, like at that point in my career was like ring time and like maybe some assistance. It's like, hey, like, like I would have to fight with the promoters. Like I remember we did the CWI. There was a guy named Turk, and like I was wrestling Turk a lot on the tour. And then he had friends when we got to New Brunswick that he knew from like university that were coming down to watch the show. And then I'm like, and we were the opening match. So I'm like, I'm going to put Turk over because he's got people. Like I would ride with him because it was like peaceful, and they're like, no, you can't. And I'm like, yeah, like, and they're like, no. So I just put him over anyways. Like it totally ruined it. Like, but like, I know that's not the right thing to do, but it's just, I don't know. I truly like didn't matter as long as like people were entertained. And if I can make someone happy, it's like, why not go for that? Right. Because I don't think, like, maybe you'll hear it from someone else. I don't think I was ever like a dick to someone. Like, I don't think I was. So if my reputation would be more, I was a nicer person than a better wrestler, it's like better for me.
Yeah. To me, you didn't sound like a dick or anything.
Yeah.
But maybe that's because I'm in the business, and I'd rather be friends with someone who's real and fake.
Yeah.
So
because it's hard to find.
Yeah. Like, absolutely.
But we've never met, have we?
No. That's why. Oh, that was another thing. That was another thing I asked Josh. I'm like, so like, do you know if Rico and I ever crossed paths? And I think he just said like when I left or something, you probably came back for a visit. And then when I left, you came back like home.
Okay.
I don't know. So yeah.
Yeah, because you worked a lot of like shows in like the US, and then you worked shows for like Scott D'Amore. I never worked any shows like for D'Amore. I never worked like for any of those guys. Like, so there would be nowhere to like really cross paths. Because like I think I told Josh, I'm like, I've heard your wife's name, but I never met her. Like, and he's like, you guys never met? So no, never met. So yeah, because like where did you train?
I started off at Squared Circle. And
Okay.
then
And
as
who's a
I,
trainer there?
the head trainer was supposed to be Rob,
Yeah.
but he didn't really train me. It was more so like the
Steve?
head
Like,
Steve showed me a couple things, and then
mhm.
like Ash and Chambers showed me a couple things.
Uh-huh.
And then when I traveled to Michigan, I learned some more there. So like
Yeah.
everywhere I went, I would
Y-
go to the nearest training facility and like learn a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. No, like even like you mentioned, like Ash and Chris Chambers. Like, so when I first like started in Ontario, like they were around, and then like I remember like people saying to me like, you got to watch out for these guys. They just latch on to like whoever's like, head of the clique so they can get in. And I was kind of like, I don't blame them, like,
Mhm.
but then when you keep hearing it, and it's like, well, what's the bitterness? Like, I always think like Chambers had an awesome look, and I thought like Ash had like pretty decent gimmicks because he was like original, like
Mhm.
he was into that punk thing before like that was cool, like,
Yeah.
but then it's like, you hear shit, and then I'm like, maybe these guys are dicks, maybe they're not, I don't know. But like they didn't care for me. You know what I mean? Like you kind of get that vibe where it was just like, I can't do nothing for you. So, like, so it's not like I have a beef with them or anything like that, but it's just like, that's the way wrestling is. Like,
Mhm.
it's like, what can you do for me? Like,
Yeah.
so you always seem like, especially a guy like Chambers, he had the athleticism. Like, he'd be someone like good to kind of learn stuff from.
Yeah.
Like,
He
I don't
actually
know if
has
he
his
still
own
wrestles.
he has his own wrestling school.
Okay. Yeah. Like, I could
Mhm.
see it. Like, I could see him, like, yeah, he's a better looking guy than like Shawn Michaels. You know what I mean? Like, kind of like wrestles the same way.
Yeah.
Like, I could see him like being marketable, but whatever, if he wants to go somewhere and try it, like, like, but um yeah, like there was a lot of guys that were like all kind of like part of cliques, but not part of cliques. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and then it was like, how do you get in with the cliques? And then it's like, do you even want to bother? Like,
Yeah.
so it was like very, I think it was much, I can't judge for now, but like, say 2009, 10, when I came back here, I
Mhm.
think it was like harder in like the early 2000s that it was, 2008, 9, 10. Like, I think it was like easier for those guys in those years. Like, I think it was like kind of tough to break through. You got to remember too, we had a commission back then, so there wasn't as many shows. So like
Mhm.
every
Yeah.
show that happened meant a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I rambled enough. I hope I got what you want and you're not bored.
Not at all.
Yeah. No,
Rico, thank you so much. I really
no
appreciate it.
problem. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Rico can help you virtually and in person. So even if you're far away, like even if you're in the States, you can contact Rico and he'll help you. Once again, you can DM Rico on Instagram at Rico Montana _1. That does it for this episode. Until then, see you next Tuesday.